I'm not hearing anything. Are they? All right, we are on there. Apologies. We're in Rome, and we look at the Sistine Chapel. We can see smoke, what appears to be white smoke, billowing from the chimney. That is indicative, along with the bells you're hearing, that there is a new pope. A new pope has been elected on the second day of the conclave. It is a dramatic, emotional moment here in Rome as this takes place. You can hear the crowds, thousands who packed into St. Peter's Square, hoping to witness this very moment. Look at the crowd. Ann Thompson is with me now, who covers the Vatican for us at NBC News. Your thoughts as we watch this, your thoughts as we're in the second day of the conclave.
Well, my first thought is it follows the same pattern as we saw with the election of Pope Benedict XVI and Pope Francis. Both elections happened on the second day. We don't know if this happened on the fourth or fifth ballot. I think it's a bit of a surprise, given the fact that there was no clear frontrunner going into this conclave, at least from what we could tell. But they have done their job. And it took us a little while because we saw the white smoke. The second clue is always to hear the bells, and it took them a bit to get to that. But the Catholic Church has a new leader, and it will take about an hour before we know who it is and what his name will be.
There will be a matter of business here in which he'll be announced as the Pope, vestments that have to be prepared for him. So it will be George Weigel sometime before we see him.
I think 45 minutes to an hour, Lester. This is a 5-ballot election, it would seem to me, and that's pretty fast work for a group of men that were the most diverse electorate in papal history. Really didn't know each other that well, and they seem to have reached a decision rather quickly. Last night, when we were here for 3 hours, it seemed like this might take forever. But the balloting this morning went very quickly, 2 hours for 2 ballots, and now we're just a little bit over 2 hours into the afternoon voting period, and a decision has been reached.
Let's go down to the square itself. Molly Hunter is there capturing this moment. You see on the left side of your screen just some of the celebrations underway. Molly.
Lester, what an unbelievable moment. We were actually on the air with NBC News Now, our streaming network, at the exact time. And the cheers that erupted being around all of these people was an unbelievable experience. I'm going to introduce you to a couple people, but I just want to show you these crowds. Everyone now, eyes trained on that screen, watching that white smoke billow out. Instantly, everyone put up their cameras. And now there's a sense that kind of everyone's waiting and watching to see what happens next. I do want to introduce you and bring you in. Haley, do you mind coming to join me right over here with Seth? You guys, you were just here for that moment.
Yeah.
Can you tell me what that was like?
It was incredible. I'd actually just gotten my rosary out to start praying and said, you know, in Our Father, that the Holy Spirit would help elect a pope, and then we saw the white smoke, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, that's white, it's white.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Did you take a second to kind of, is it white, is it black? What was going through your head?
We saw it come out.
At the very front, you didn't have anyone to look at right there.
We saw it come out, and we're like, there's smoke, and then we're like, oh, that's white, and then we heard the applause and the cheers, and it was just so surreal, so surreal.
So surreal.
Very overwhelming.
What's going through your head? Haley's a Catholic, you're not a Catholic, but what is it like to be here?
It's, you know, although being a Protestant, there's still a lot of faithfulness here and a lot of people all over the world gathering for this, which is just really awesome. It's wild to see the amount of people here just for this event.
You guys, thank you so much.
Thank you.
What an experience. I don't want to make you miss out at all. Lester, if I do have another second, I also want to introduce you over here to Joe and Devin. Guys, you lucked out. You are on your honeymoon. You were in Rome for one night. What was that like?
Well, lucked out was an understatement. So cool to be here. We're only in Rome for 3 days. To be able to be here coincidentally for this, everything, it's truly unbelievable.
Joe, what was that like? What's it like hearing these bells ringing, be around all these people?
It's a surreal moment. It's hard to put in words right now, but like my wife said, to only be here for 3 days and to be a part of history, I can't wait to tell my grandkids about this one day.
You guys were here witnessing it. Can you give us a sense of the crowd? We hear all these different languages, so many different types of people here. What does it feel like?
Amazing. Yeah, the crowd, I feel like everyone was so intently watching that screen, and then the smoke, and then I think we're all like, is it black? Is it white? Like, it was hard to tell the exact color, but I think when it clicked, and the cheering, you knew.
And then the bells just...
And then the bells.
30 seconds later.
Absolutely. Puts it all together, and now we can't wait to wait, and hopefully see who it is.
And now is actually the waiting, and the crowds, Lester, are pouring in actually as the bells are ringing. We're seeing, I would say probably about 10, 15,000 people were in here when that happened, but now the crowds are just coming in. I'm going to send it back to you because we just lost communication. We're going to dial back in, Lester.
Molly, thanks very much. What an incredible scene there in the square as the people move in and those who were able to witness it. And we'll be talking, of course, to more of them. I want to bring in our Vatican analyst, Christopher White, now, who's a Vatican correspondent for National Catholic Reporter. We appreciate you being with us. This happened in a very short time, I guess not compared necessarily to the last few conclaves, but again, a fairly short time. What do you read into that and who we might see step out of that loge here in the next hour or so?
Yeah, I think going into this, many of us thought it might take some time for them to reach a conclusion because they're men from all over the world who hadn't spent a lot of time together. But I think because this quick decision, we're likely to find one of the names higher up on most people's frontrunner list emerge from the balcony. I'm not going to make any predictions as to who that might be, but I think it's going to be a name that those of us who cover the Vatican day in and day out are probably more familiar with than had they gone to a third or fourth day and perhaps needed to reach a more compromised type candidate.
When there will be a name announced here shortly, we'll find out the papal name of the new pope. What do we read into that?
Well, a name says a lot about someone's priorities. I mean, Pope Francis shocked the world when he became the first pope to ever take the name Francis, named, of course, after the 13th century saint who eschewed wealth and focused on the poor. It sort of set a roadmap for his papacy. So, of course, we'll be paying attention to the name the Pope chooses, what he comes out on the balcony wearing. Pope Francis, of course, wore just the simple white vestments that caught so many by surprise. And he had that very simple greeting, buonasera, good evening. So, of course, we'll be reading into those first signs and signals to hear what the new Pope has to say about his papacy that we might just find out in the next hour or so.
All right, Christopher, thank you very much. We'll have you stand by. Let me bring back George Weigel into the conversation. George, can you walk through what's going to happen here over this next hour and the things that have to be clicked off?
The new pope will be taken to what's sometimes referred to as the Room of Tears. It's a small sacristy off the back of the Sistine Chapel where several white cassocks of various sizes have been prepared. He'll take the one that fits best. The tailor from Gamarelli Brothers here in Rome will get him fitted up properly. He'll then receive in procession. The College of Cardinals will come up one by one to congratulate him. And then the Masters of Ceremonies will lead the new Pope through the Sistine Chapel, through the Basilica, into what's called the Hall of Benedictions over St. Peter's Basilica, the second tier of the facade there. There's a white curtain with a red drapery there. That's the central loggia of the Basilica. The Cardinal Proto-Deacon, the senior cardinal in the Order of Cardinal Deacons, will come out and announce the name of the new pope and the regnal name, the papal name that he's taken. And then the new pope will come out and be greeted by the crowd.
Is it fair to say this will likely be someone that most of the people in that crowd or around the world will not know?
I think that's probably the case. There were not a lot of large world-scale public personalities in the College of Cardinals at this moment. I think the Italian crowd here, which will be a substantial part of this, because people are right as we're sitting here running to St. Peter's from all over Rome, will know the cast of characters better than people who are just here for a holiday. But whoever it is, I think will be greeted very warmly. There's a sense in which this community of 1.4 billion people has been without a father for over 2 weeks now. And
Anne, you have, as we've said, for a long time, you have covered the Vatican for us. This is now another conclave that has gone down in relatively short order. Are we setting, is there a new standard or a new modern look at these conclaves?
Well, I think you do see that because we now had the third conclave that was decided where the Pope was elected within 2 days, and that's extraordinary, especially considering the global nature of the church now and how Francis tried to expand it, appointing cardinals from the peripheries, as he said. And I think one of the wonderful things as you look at this crowd, you see all the flags from all over the world. People are proud of their country. They come to celebrate not only their faith, but where they're from. And it kind of has the feeling I've always thought of a World Cup event, you know, when they're waiting for them. But the other thing that Christopher said, and I think that is very true, is right from the start, we're going to see, is this Pope going to continue France's papacy of humility in that he didn't wear the red mozzetta when he came out. He just came out in the simple white cassock. Will he take the papal limousine, something Francis shunned?
So he will be compared to his...
Instantly.
Okay.
Instantly. And that's a tough comparison right from the start. I mean, that moment when you walk out on the balcony is frightening, would be frightening for anyone. You've got 50,000 people in the square all cheering. And right from the start, I mean, it took Francis a little bit to get going in his speech. And right from the start, you're going to be compared to your predecessor.
Let me let Molly take it away for a little bit and get us a sense of what's happening right now in St. Peter's Square. Obviously, you see people are now packing around the Basilica. You can hear the cheers. Molly, give us a sense of what it's like to be in that.
Communications actually just dropped, but I do think you just asked me to bring us down here. I'm standing with a couple of Italians, actually Romans. This is your city.
Yeah.
You have come to the square. Did you watch the smoke come in?
Yes, we arrived like 5 minutes before the white smoke came on. We felt so lucky. We thought we didn't make it for the last time.
It was very moving, very moving.
What does it feel like? This is your city. You have people from all over the world.
Yes.
I see flags from everywhere.
That's the reason why we are here, because my daughter asked me, Mom, why don't we go? Yes, sure. It's a historical event. Everybody comes from around the world. We must go and watch it.
And looking out at this crowd, seeing the flags, you're standing next to people. Where are you from?
Roma.
You're from Rome as well. People
Yes.
from all over this city who hear the bells and then rush in. What do you want? What do you want to say to the world?
Oh,
what does it feel like? What does it mean to you?
Less wars. Free Palestine.
Okay. Well, now we are watching, of course. So enjoy watching with this huge crowd. Lester, the crowds are only growing. We're seeing people coming in from all directions. I'll send it back to you.
We've lost IFB with you.
Yeah, people want to get close and be able to greet the new Pope, who will make the appearance in due time. And again, we're just working off previous conclaves, and it's generally been about an hour, hour 10, hour 15. So not precise, but that will be a huge moment. And Anne, to your point, there will be a comparison that begins right away to his predecessor. And George, at the same time, he will have to demonstrate that he is his own person. Is that difficult in this context?
No, I don't think so. Every pope is different. Every pope brings a certain personality, a certain set of talents to this very, very difficult job. And in that context, I think it's probably good not to think about this in terms of winners and losers. This is a tremendous burden that someone, a human being, a man, has just accepted to spend the rest of his life carrying. To be the spiritual father of 1.4 million people, to be both firm and gentle, to be both a truth teller and a man of compassion and charity, to reform a bureaucracy here in Rome that is in very bad need of reform, including financial reform, and somehow in the midst of all of that to cultivate his own soul, to remain a person of prayer, a person in conversation with the Lord. That's really asking a lot of anybody. So whoever we see come out on that central loggia deserves a great deal of credit for accepting that burden.
Yeah, I didn't necessarily appreciate how much this person's life is going to change. Obviously, you're the Pope, but at the same time, we were talking earlier, this person now won't go to the airport and fly home and say goodbye to friends and pack up. And
he's not going to walk down the Borgo Pio and get a pizza.
No.
I mean,
which you might have been able to do.
Might have been able to do 72 hours ago. It's a real sacrifice of self. You know, there's that famous scene in the end of John's Gospel where the risen Lord Jesus says to Peter 3 times, "Do you love me? Do you love me? Do you love me more than the rest of these?" John Paul II interpreted that to mean that Peter is being asked, can you empty yourself of yourself more than the rest of these in order to be the servant of the servants of God? And that's a tremendous challenge for anyone. And it's a challenge that deserves the support of the people of the church, whatever their views about individuals or particular questions in the church. Whoever this is has agreed to take on a very, very difficult and burdensome job, and literally to walk the way of the cross with the Lord.
And I think also accepting that burden has an impact, obviously has an impact on the person, but can either confine them or free them. In Francis' case, it liberated him.
That's right.
Because he was not the charismatic figure that the world came to know when he was in Buenos Aires as Cardinal Jorge Mario Bergoglio. He was much more quiet, almost dour. He's the bishop of the slums, rode the subway. He brought that mentality, that caring for the poor, to the papacy. But he wanted to reach out. It was so important to him. And you saw that right from the beginning to the second to last day of his life, when on Easter Sunday he rode in the Pope Mobile, and he would be dead 24 hours later. As one of his friends said, he died with his boots on.
We are now joined by Bishop Robert Barron of the Diocese of Winona, Rochester, Minnesota. Bishop, thank you so much for being here. You stopped by our broadcast position a little while ago and started up the conversation we've all been having over the last a couple of days. You know, when will it happen? Can you give us your thoughts in watching this moment come true?
Yeah, it was sooner than I thought. I was anticipating perhaps tomorrow. You know, there were some divisions among the cardinals during the general congregations. A lot of us thought it would take a little while to sort this out. The fact they came to a consensus pretty quickly, obviously, I think it's telling and very interesting. Did a candidate emerge that everyone said, okay, we can at least live with this candidate? That seems to be what happened. So I think a lot of us were surprised by the rapidity of this.
Yeah, this is obviously a new chapter in Catholic history. How different, though, will this chapter be from the previous one? And I'm not necessarily speaking only of, Pope Francis.
Well, we'll see. That was the great issue. It always faces a conclave. To what degree do we continue the momentum of the previous papacy? To what degree do we set a new direction? As I say, there were divisions about that. They found someone that I guess at least 89 thought will carry us in a good direction. Maybe a balance of those two. That's my guess. They found someone that would have the best of Francis and maybe some of the corrections the cardinals wanted. But again, they came to it quickly, which I think is a good sign.
We will, in short order, learn the name of the new pope. Can you give us your thoughts on the name, the significance of the name he picks?
Well, it's the first major decision he makes, and it's a very telling one. Now all these names are so loaded with symbolic significance. If he becomes Francis II, that'll tell us a lot. If he's John Paul III, that will tell us an awful lot. If he's John the 24th, or if he's Pius XIII. I mean, all the recent papal names are pretty loaded with symbolic significance. Or he might do something very different, like Pope Benedict XVI. So we'll see. It'll be the first indication, serious indication, of what this man wants to do.
We're looking, obviously, at the high shot over St. Peter's Square right now. We can hear the crowd being energized now. Here comes the marching band. In a very short time, we would expect we will see the new Pope, and we will learn the new Pope's name and whatever message he may share at this moment. There's the balcony on the right side of your screen, where he will make his first appearance soon. We got our first indication, obviously, the smoke, the white smoke pouring out of the chimney that we've been staring at, and then the sound of bells tolling, loudly tolling over the Vatican and throughout the streets of Rome. People taking it as a call to answer, and now filing their way here to witness this historic moment in their church. I say their church, or those who are simply curious about the faith and want to be a part of this moment. We will, we tend to always look at popes as peacemakers in a very turbulent world, and so they obviously are key figures that will be watched around the world as this moment comes together.
They become symbols of moral authority, a moral voice. I mean, that's what Francis brought to the issue of climate change with his encyclical Laudato Si. He was able to bring that moral weight to that issue, and that's why popes in particular are seen not just by Catholics but by people around the world as important figures.
We want to dip in now and listen to some of the pageantry and the songs that lead up to the appearance of the new Pope. Some of the fanfare now as the marching band leading a procession, the Swiss Guard actually leading the procession there, and members of the crowd here waiting for the magical moment of meeting the new Pope. As we wait for that and keep our cameras trained on the Basilica and that balcony, I want to bring in Joe Donnelly, the former U.S. ambassador to the Holy See. Mr. Ambassador, thank you so much for being with us. We chatted yesterday about the qualities that you thought might be important, the issues that might be important. The reality of the moment now is that there is a new Pope. What are your expectations? What are you feeling right now?
You'll all laugh because I was outside of St. Patrick's walking down the street to get a soda, and all of a sudden the bells started ringing like crazy, and I said, I think we have a new Pope. And a fella came running out the doors saying, we have a new Pope. So the view from the States is great excitement. And the feeling is hope, that in this one person, there's so much hope placed for the opportunity for the poor, for people to be treated more equitably, for their views of the church to continue forward, to reach out to others. And so it's a massive, massive responsibility, but it's a moment of excitement and of hope more than anything, I think.
You know, in a few minutes, we will learn who the new pope is, and we'll all go scrambling into our research books here now to find out as much as we can about them. This is not a political contest, as we've talked about before, but does it have some of the political overtones, this need to make strong symbolic statements from the get-go?
I think it does, because the world is in such a place right now. We just saw India and Pakistan at cross swords, and people are looking for moral leadership, for strong leadership. And the new pope that comes out can say, look, we are all part of one planet. We are all children of God. It's time we have to take care of one another. And so we're in a unique time right now with conflicts in so many places, and on the shoulders of this cardinal now to be pope that is coming out is so much of the weight of the world.
You know, we talked about the cardinal electors not having spent a lot of time together. They could have started this process on Monday. They chose the middle of the week instead. But there was that issue of time and knowledge of each other. Is it possible in the end it worked in reverse, that the lack of knowledge about each other allowed them to tackle specific issues more directly?
Yes, and I think also for the new cardinals, they wanted to have enough time to become comfortable and to also say, look, we're in no rush. We want to get this right. And I think it's a credit to whoever the new pope is that they felt so comfortable with this person, because this, for many, is the biggest decision they are ever going to make in their lives as a cardinal. And so they wanted to get it right. And obviously, a candidate really came through on this.
Ambassador Donnelly, we thank you for joining us at this moment. The camera on the right, trained on the balcony where the new pope will first make his first public appearance. The crowd building there from across the roads and streets of Rome. Italians, local Romans, as well as people from around the world. It's, of course, a huge tourist destination. People would be there anytime in big numbers, but many now feeling mighty fortunate to be front row witnesses to history. A new pope about to be introduced in the Vatican. George?
Thinking about this question of what the Pope says, the new Pope says when he comes out on the central loggia of the Basilica, and I think we should perhaps not overplay that too much. There will be a mass, a public mass, for the inauguration of the pontificate, presumably sometime next week. And that's when the Pope is going to have a chance to really lay out a vision of the future. This is more of a personal introduction today. Karol Wojtyła, first non-Italian in 455 years, comes out on the Central Loggia on October 16th, 1978, and introduces himself in Italian and says to the crowd, if I don't speak your language perfectly, you will correct me. It was an instant connection there with the crowd. That's the first task, is to introduce yourself. The policy statement, or the inaugural address, if you will be the homily, the sermon at the inaugural Mass, presumably sometime early next week or the middle of next week. That's where you're going to get real insight, I think, into where this man intends to lead the church in the middle of the 21st century.
Color guards and marching bands filling in front of the Basilica here in advance of the appearance of the new Pope. Let's listen a little bit. Again, you've been watching some of the fanfare here in advance of the first public appearance by the new Pope, the new leader of the Catholic Church. I want to go back to Vatican analyst Christopher White, who is a Vatican correspondent for National Catholic Reporter. Thank you for staying with us. Can you talk about this moment for those people who have stood there in the bright sunshine all day waiting for this moment? What does that tell you about the health of the church that this new leader will take over?
You know, it's interesting, Lester. I'm standing here above St. Peter's Square, and I'm looking at images of people below praying very fervently, but also hearing joyful shouts already of Viva il Papa, long live the Pope. I think it just goes to show you how many people are invested in this moment without even knowing who's going to come out on that central balcony. And as someone who traveled all around the world with Pope Francis, it's really remarkable how many people are just in awe of the figure of the Pope and how much they are personally attached to this office. People of deep faith and people that are perhaps just curious or no faith at all. And I think that's why, you know, the expectation that we've had over the past 24 hours or so has had a lot more to do than just seagulls and white smoke. But I think it's because what they hope this person represents. And I think we'll get a clue as to who this person is in the next few minutes here. And we'll find out in the coming days sort of what his program will be for the Catholic Church.
Ann Thompson's got some insight here.
Yeah, you see in the picture before, there were some of the cardinals who were over the age of 80 gathering there. We saw Don Worrell, who is the former Archbishop of Washington, who is a cardinal, Sean O'Malley, who's the former Archbishop of Boston, who's also a cardinal. So I assume the new Pope will come out shortly.
And again, these are cardinals who were not electors.
Right, they are over the age of 80. Yep.
Lester, I was just thinking while we were looking at that pageantry, what an extraordinary historical comeback this represents. In 1870, when the Pope retired into the Vatican and called himself the prisoner of the Vatican, as the reunification of Italy ended the Papal States, a lot of very smart people in Europe thought the papacy is over. This is done as a force in world affairs. And we're, a century and a half after that, and there is no election in the world that produces something quite like this.
George, let me ask you what is happening right now, what is likely happening right now beyond these doors?
I think they're probably getting closer to the cardinals, who will fill a lot of those spaces to the side of the central loggia, are walking up there. The new Pope is walking up there. And it shouldn't be that much longer before those doors open. And the usual pattern is to hang a banner over that front balcony. That'll be the first sign that things are really about to get moving.
Yeah, it's coming up at about 6:45 in the evening here in Rome, with the white smoke first appeared at 6:07 local time, so about 2 hours after the start of the second session of the day. So they move very quickly in both sessions, the late and the early session. And now there was some surprise, and I think many will acknowledge surprise at seeing white smoke at this stage of the game. But nonetheless, that's what we saw. We heard the bells chiming across Rome, and now the color guards, the marching bands, waiting the first appearance of the new Pope.
And we are waiting for Cardinal Proto-Deacon Dominic Mamberti, who will announce those famous words, Habemus Papam. And then he will greet the crowd in Latin, and then he will read the birth name of the cardinal, the new Pope, in Latin, and then he will give us the name that cardinal will take as Pope, and that's always an electric moment.
Now, Francis, if I recall, immediately asked for prayers.
He did. He stood on the balcony, and he was uncomfortable for a few seconds. They always are because of this huge crowd. And then he said it seems like they had to go to the ends of the earth to find the Bishop of Rome. And he said, before I pray for you, pray for me. And he bent to the crowd.
Kind of set a tone.
He really did. And it's amazing. There was silence. People absolutely were silent, which is a rare thing in Rome. And it was a magical moment, and it did set the tone for the next 12 years.
So this is the process now. Is he officially the Pope, or is it after he acknowledges?
As soon as he says yes, he's the Pope. That's.
And he had the choice to say no.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. And some have said no.
Again, there's the picture. There's the balcony. The balcony where the new Pope will appear. As we continue to watch for that moment, which should be drawing quite close, we want to bring into the conversation NBC News contributor Kathleen Sprouse-Cummings, who is a professor of American Studies and History at Notre Dame. Professor, we appreciate you joining us. I think when I talked to you yesterday, I asked you if you were excited. I'm assuming that the answer is still yes.
The answer is still yes. When it comes to rituals, the Catholic Church is really beyond compare. What an amazing sight to behold. And the fact that the whole world is transfixed on this moment just gives such hope, I think, in the world and in the Church today in this Jubilee of Hope. It's so hard to wait to see who it is.
Is there I hate to keep making the comparisons to politics, but it's really all we have. Is there a honeymoon that a new Pope will endure?
Thinking back to March 2013, Pope Francis so immediately, as Anne said just a moment ago, in that gesture and in others, signaled that it was a different kind of papacy. It's such a different style. So it remains to be seen what the new Pope will do. But yes, I think at this moment you can see this. There's so much goodwill, and the fact that the cardinals reached a consensus so much quicker than many people thought they would have done. It's really a sign that there is a lot of momentum and a lot of support, and that people are ready to support this new Pope. So I don't think of it so much as a honeymoon as just a good start, a start for a leader who is going to be facing a great number of challenges. But to see the unity right now is really inspiring.
What do you expect to see from world leaders in terms of how they engage? We are obviously facing a lot of world issues, war on various fronts. The Pope always seemed as a bit of a moral authority. Would you expect world leaders to begin reaching out almost immediately?
Absolutely. I think Pope Francis had such credible moral authority in a world where so few world leaders did have that authority. It's a complex time, globally speaking. Will the new Pope have the global sensibilities to deal with these challenges and to interact with world leaders? Certainly every indication is that is so. So I expect world leaders to be also watching right at this moment too. They'll be as excited as everybody else.
Yeah, we're operating a little bit in the dark. Obviously, it's a secret process, but there was so much conversation about this being a group not familiar with each other, a larger group. Did that possibly, in the end, work in the favor of getting down to business and discussing the issues that they could at least agree on mattered most?
I think it may well have done that. The cardinals were aware that the world was watching, and they didn't want to project disunity or disorganization. So I think they probably worked very hard to get to know each other. I think it's also true that in our digital age and with the great work of journalists, we actually know a lot about people that we might not have had the access to. So I think they would have been reading up on each other's profiles, as everybody has been doing. And I think in this connected world, it's a lot easier. So maybe we underestimated how well they knew each other.
Kathleen Sprouse-Cummings, we appreciate you being along with our coverage here as we look at the huge crowds lining the streets now leading to St. Peter's Square. A remarkable moment. You could call this the main event, or maybe the main event was when the white smoke billowed over Rome. Nonetheless, there is huge anticipation now of the faithful and the curious who are ready to greet and see the new Pope. Let me go back down to Molly Hunter right now, who is in that crowd right now to give us a sense of the building excitement. Hello, Molly.
Lester, that's right. They're the faithful. They're the curious. There are Romans who live in this area. Everyone who heard those bells is here. And I actually want to introduce you to a couple from New York. Can you tell me your names again?
Nicole.
Brian. And Brian. You guys were not in the square when it happened. You heard those bells. You saw the notification. What'd you do?
We immediately came down here. We knew we wanted to be here for this monumental moment. Yeah. I mean, we were here on chance, and so we had to make it down here.
Well, and a lot of people here are tourists, happen to be here, were curious, so they came by. But what does it feel like now that you're in the square with tens of thousands of people?
Oh, it's honestly surreal. I've never seen anything like this before. It's just truly amazing. We were here earlier, we did the pilgrimage, but it was black smoke in the morning. But to see the white smoke now, it's amazing.
Can you help me describe just the scene that we're seeing? We're seeing different flags flying. We're hearing so many different languages. Have you ever seen anything like this? Can you describe what it feels like to be here?
It feels like Times Square on New Year's. But the amount of people that come from all sorts of different countries to just see this amazing moment, it's truly surreal. You see all the flags. It's a really beautiful moment.
Yeah. So you guys are going to stay now. Now that you're in the square,
Yes,
you're going to stay to see who the
absolutely.
next pope is.
Yes.
Do you have any kind of feelings about what direction you're hoping it's going to go, or now that you're here?
I'm just excited to see who it is. I mean, it was a quick conclave, so whatever decision is made, I'm sure it's the best one, and it's going to be exciting to see.
Yeah, I'm sure the Cardinals do their due diligence, and I'm sure the next pope will be a great pope.
Guys, I really appreciate you
Thank
talking
you.
and enjoy this.
Thank you.
Truly extraordinary moment, Lester. We've actually just lost communication again. I'm going to send it back up to you. But we will go deeper in the crowd to find some more people to bring their viewpoints to you.
All right, sounds good. I want to go back to Joe Donnelly, former U.S. ambassador to the Holy See. Ambassador, we were speaking a moment about, in terms of a honeymoon and what a new pope can accomplish in a short time. Is there pressure to tick off certain things on the list right out of the gate?
Well, I don't think they have to tick off certain things because there's so much of a wave of goodwill right now. And this pope will be the universal moral leader. You can't think of anybody else that will have the universal moral power that the new pope will have. And so they have incredible goodwill, and they do have a honeymoon and some time to do all of these things. And so they can make an incredible difference immediately.
Ambassador, just getting word that this election was on the fourth ballot, that the new pope again was selected on the fourth ballot. Does that surprise you?
I thought it might be today, and I think that all the new members wanted to make sure that they fulfill their duty. They take it so seriously, and they felt confident in this person. It was a confidence earned very quickly. It's going to be amazing to watch, but whoever it is obviously impressed the Cardinals very, very significantly, because I thought it might be the last vote today or tomorrow. So this is a little bit earlier than I thought.
Yeah, I want to pick up what you were saying about the moral authority of the church right now and this moment. Is the world more in need than ever of this person and the potential of this person?
Lester, it really is. People are looking for hope, are looking for an opportunity to make the world better. I was at the G7 last June in southern Italy, and various world leaders came in, and everybody just kind of politely applauded. Pope Francis walked in, and everybody stood up. And it was clear he was the rock star of the whole event. And so I think that's being transferred to the new pope, that there's a desire from all corners of the planet to hope for success.
And I think you'll agree that we can't diminish some of the specific problems that the church itself is facing, the ongoing abuse crisis, a huge deficit, and other issues. How important do you think it was that this will be someone who has administrative skills?
It's really important because of the challenges you indicated, the sexual abuse crisis, the management of the Vatican. They have to show moral leadership on these things as well. And when they do, confidence comes back. Confidence, for instance, in the United States in the church comes back when the sexual abuse crisis is handled well, is handled in a better way than it has been. And so, and people are giving this new pope the chance to do that.
Ambassador, I'll ask you to stand by. I just want to set the scene for people who may be tuning in. You probably don't need me to say it because the pictures really speak volumes. There is a new pope. We are about to meet him. We are about to learn his name as pontiff, and this crowd will be able to finally find out who is going to lead the Catholic Church from this point going forward. It was an emotional, a magical moment as crowds were in the square when the white smoke appeared. The juxtaposition of ancient times, this process, the secret process inside the Sistine Chapel, at the same time, the chimney being viewed by thousands on the plaza or on the square on a television monitor, a big television monitor, as if it was a sporting event. So the two worlds coming together at this moment. You're hearing the sound of helicopters likely running security over us. And we saw, of course, the smoke and the bells that rang across Rome, signifying a new pope. And we learned just a short time ago he was elected on the 4th ballot. George, what's the significance of that? I'll ask the same thing to Ann.
I think it suggests that a consensus was quickly reached, that whoever got a large vote last night built that vote up over the next 2 or 3 ballots. I do want to touch, Lester, on this question of management. It's not simply a question of the Pope being a good manager himself, although that really helps. He has to know how to pick people. He has to know how to choose men and women of competence and probity in running a very complex bureaucracy here and in fixing this financial problem. That does not require finding clerics necessarily. Might require finding a lot of good lay people who know how to manage money and who know how to be stewards of money in an open and transparent way.
And one of the things that half the population will be watching for, Lester, is does this Pope continue the efforts of Pope Francis to make women leaders in the Curia? He has done that. He has faced some resistance from it. He has also separated the need to be a priest from the ability to lead what they call dicastery, a department in the Vatican. And so I think that's one of the things people will be looking for. But I just wanted to follow up on something that Ambassador Donnelly said about the world situation and how much people are looking for someone with moral authority to step in. Even when you have that moral authority, it is so difficult to change intractable problems. Pope Francis had a prayer service for the situation in Israel and Palestine. This was back early in his papacy. He tried to mediate, offered the Vatican as a place where they could mediate the Ukraine-Russia war. He called the Catholic Church in Gaza every night since October 7th to try to give them comfort. He had the families of the Israeli hostages in particular. I remember I met Rachel Goldberg and John Poland when they came here to meet him. He did all these things, and still the violence raged on. It was incredibly frustrating.
You look at these pictures right now and all these flags, it reminds you of obviously the global nature of the church, but it also reminds the church's growth, or in some cases lack of growth, falls regionally, and that continues to be an issue.
Interesting to me, Lester, that so many of these flags are European, and that's the least center of growth in the church today.
There's an American flag.
There's an American flag. There's a flag of South Africa. Sub-Saharan Africa is the growth center of the Catholic Church throughout the world today, and will be the demographic center.
You think we're going to see that reflected when the new Pope appears in a moment?
Well, perhaps, but even more to the point, we're going to see it reflected in the future. This is a church that is becoming truly global and truly universal, and that's reflected in this crowd. I'm also thinking about the fact that the colonnade, these two arms that surround the square, were not part of the original design of St. Peter's, and how perfect they are as they suggest a kind of embrace of the entire world.
It's been roughly 55 minutes or so since the white smoke appeared, and we're still waiting for the new Pope. It is 1 p.m. on the East Coast, 7 p.m. here in Rome. And just under an hour ago, we learned that a new pope has been elected to lead the Catholic Church. We are still waiting to learn the identity of the Pope. In any moment now, we expect him to be announced on the loggia or balcony of St. Peter's Basilica. Just behind where we are right now, thousands have quickly assembled in St. Peter's Square, waiting for the introduction of the Pope. And we should know many of those people had been there all day. Others looked at their watches and said, oh, maybe it could happen within this window, and they've made their way. And someone that has been telling their stories and sharing the excitement is our Molly Hunter. Molly, take it away for a few.
Lester, I want to introduce you to 3 University of Indiana Wilmington students. Can you give me your names, guys?
I'm Will. Kevin. Steven.
So you guys are studying abroad in Rome. You've chosen an extraordinary semester, clearly, to be here in Rome. You're also Catholic. You guys were in class when the white smoke came. What happened then? Well, can you walk me through?
Well, we got released from class, and the entire street was just packed with people. Usually it's very trafficky, and we were just running through the streets, and other people were doing it as well.
I think minutes ago you said you were just sprinting at kind of max speed to get here.
Exactly.
And everyone else was doing that. They were closing roads, you were saying?
Yeah, and we unfortunately missed the white smoke. A little bummed about that, but we're here now, and it's absolutely amazing.
Give me a sense of the crowd right now.
I mean, it's packed. It took us about 10 to 15 minutes to get to the spot that we're at right now. I mean, running from where we were, the traffic, Rome is normally packed, and everything else is unbelievable.
Give me a sense for our audience. We're seeing flags. We're hearing all different
people from everywhere. Everyone from everywhere, and it's all Catholics, and we're very excited to see the Pope come out.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Catholics, and I think a lot of tourists who happen to be here.
Oh, yeah,
were
definitely.
Curious, who came on down. What does it feel like for you to be here as a Catholic?
Well, this doesn't happen that often. I think the last Pope was elected like 13 years ago. So to be here during this time, we're also leaving tomorrow and Saturday. So we're lucky the Cardinals didn't take too long, and it's a pretty cool experience.
What extraordinary timing. And you guys are going to stay, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Pretty soon. It's been about 55, 56 minutes. Do you guys have the rest of your class also here? Everyone was feeling pretty excited?
A lot of kids came, yeah. A lot of kids from class came.
Yeah, you can see when we got released, it was 4 or 5 other classes got released. Everyone was sprinting, so...
Can you imagine another event that would bring this kind of diverse population here together? I mean, looking around, they're young, old.
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
No.
Once in a lifetime experience.
You're pretty young though. What, 21? I don't know if it's necessarily once in a lifetime, but maybe once in a lifetime for you to be here in Rome.
Studying in Rome.
Studying in Rome down the street from this happening. Well, guys, enjoy this moment. I'm not going to keep you. I want to make sure you guys get good front seat views, but I really appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, thank you.
Lester, I'm going to send it back up to you. Once again, we've lost comms down here. There are a lot of people down here.
Yeah, Molly, if you can still hear me, I'm curious what the crowd was able to see. I know there were some monitors there. Could they actually see the smoke coming out of the chimney? I'm just now being told you can't hear me, so forget everything I just said. We'll get back to it. Joining us now is NBC News analyst Father John Burdenek. Father Burdenek, thank you so much for coming on. How are you feeling about your church right about now?
Well, I'm kind of feeling exactly the way these people are looking, the ones we're watching, filled with a lot of joy and a lot of hope. It never gets old. I was in Rome. I'm not in Rome right now, but I was in Rome for the last 2 elections of the Pope. And I remember doing that sprint through the streets to join the crowd, to be there. There's really a sense of, there's a sense of drama, but there's also a deep sense of hope and faith. And if you think about it, it's exciting to be there, and you can be there as a historic moment. But what's bringing all those people together? It's their faith and their hope. This happens to be a Jubilee year for the Catholic Church, and the theme of the year is hope. And we've had, I think this is the 267th Pope who will be coming out on the balcony. And so it's a sense of continuity through time, through 2,000 years, that God has been faithfully watching over his church, will continue to provide shepherds for his church. And that's part of the joy as well, that we're part of this story that reaches all the way back to the times of Christ. There we see, I think that's Cardinal O'Malley, right? The non-elector we saw briefly. I think it is, Yeah, but that sense of hope. Okay, well, God is still with us. We have a great mission still to engage in, and and guided by a shepherd. So that's part of the joy too. It's the excitement of the moment, but also this sense of coming together, through part of history, part of this story of the Catholic faith. So that's kind of what I'm feeling. I'm feeling myself, exactly what we're seeing, all those different people feeling. And it's also amazing to think, so many different backgrounds coming together for this together at the same time.
Father Bertunik, as we wait to greet the new Pope, it's hard not to look back at Pope Francis and his immediate demonstrations of humility. What would you expect? What would you hope would be the initial gestures of this new Pope as he greets the crowd?
Yeah, and there's Cardinal Wuerl, I think former from Washington, D.C. But I think what I hope for is that the Pope comes out, the new Pope comes out and is completely himself. That's what Pope Francis was. He just presented himself. That's what Pope John Paul II was as well. You remember he had his famous phrase. He said, "Open wide the doors to Christ. Do not be afraid. Do not be afraid." He said, "I'm a Pope who comes from a far country. And if I make mistakes in Italian, you'll correct me." So he was very much himself. And I hope that the Pope, as the shepherd, the spiritual father, comes out and is completely free to be himself, confident in God's work in him, and glad to be there with his flock. A lot of these people are not from Rome that we're seeing, but a lot of them are Romans. We can't forget that the Pope is also the Bishop of Rome. So his local flock is also, he's going to be greeting them as well. So I just kind of hope we get a glimpse of the Pope's personality. Each Pope is a real man with a real personality, unique one. And so I kind of hoping that we get a glimpse of that through the way that he interacts with the crowd at this moment. Of course, it is such a big job. He's right now in the room of tears, so there might be a lot of emotion, which might, impede him from really opening up. But we'll see. Yeah,
I want to ask you, what do you suspect? Keeping in mind it's been an hour now since the white smoke. What would you expect is happening right now beyond the doors inside the Basilica?
Well, I think he could be praying. Pope Francis, on his way to the balcony, stopped in the chapel and just prayed silently. But he could also be kind of discussing or be kind of mingling with the cardinals and allowing them a chance to congratulate him, a chance to embrace, a chance to have a word. There's a lot of cardinals this time, more than any in the history of these conclaves. So it might be taking a little more time as he's interacting with them in the Sistine Chapel after he put on his white cassock in the Room of Tears. So that might be happening as well.
Yeah, I'm curious your reaction to the fact that this was decided on the fourth vote.
Oh, yeah. I think I was expecting a longer one. We were all talking, well, these cardinals, some of them are so new. They're from such different places around the world, kind of a wider geographical spread than we've ever had before. So it might take them a while to come up with their choice. And obviously that didn't happen. And I was thinking about that. Maybe the unity of the core message that the church needs to communicate going forward after Pope Francis, maybe it was easier for them to come to that. I imagine it was, we have to focus on mission. The world needs the good news of Jesus Christ, and we just have to find creative and compelling ways to spread that news. And there might have been disagreements about what's the best way to do that, depending on what your preferences were or what your experience was. But that core mission might have been so obvious that they were able to come together and choose someone. I also think, even though maybe they didn't spend as much time together as past groups of cardinals had before a conclave, because so many were new and from different places, let's remember, more than half of these cardinals participated during the last 2 years in the Synod of Bishops in Rome, where they spent a lot of time together, working on themes for the church, working with Pope Francis. And then also, I think maybe a factor, today, in this world where we can follow things digitally so easily, where we have people like yourself are giving us the news so often and so frequently, I think these cardinals, wherever they were, from Mongolia to Madagascar, they were able to follow church affairs. They were able to follow the papacy of Pope Francis. So maybe they came a little more prepared than we all anticipated. And so they were able to come to an agreement or come to a consensus fairly quickly.
Father Bertunik, really great to talk to you, and clearly your enthusiasm level matches what we're hearing from the crowds in the square. So thank you for your time and your insight. We appreciate it. We are here now beyond an hour now since the white smoke. The crowds have moved in closer to the Basilica. Everyone wanted to get a first look at the new Pope when he is introduced to the world. That could occur any time, and we're basing it any time looking at some of the past conclaves and how they ended and the time from white smoke until the first appearance. And it roughly runs average, I would say, an hour 15, hour 20. So we're certainly in the window here, and that we could see the new Pope shortly. You see the flags, and we've been talking about the global nature, obviously, of the Catholic Church. 1.4 billion people, and many, as we've said before, were in town or happened to be in town. Others made the trip. They wanted to be a part of this process. Imagine just landing here in Rome, and your first stop is St. Peter's Square, and oh, by the way, the white smoke appears over the Sistine Chapel. That's a trip to remember.
But look at this picture. These are people who want to be together. They didn't want to sit in their hotel rooms and watch this. They wanted to come to the square. They wanted to be with people from all different nations and celebrate this historic moment in the history of the Catholic Church. I'm sure many of them are Catholic, some are not, but it is a great moment to be together, to be part of a community.
Well, I've shared on the air here in the last couple of days, and you've covered previous conclaves as well. This is the moment that I remember. It's seared in my memory. It's whatever your faith or whatever you think about this church, that this moment is so substantial, and it's in the pomp and the pageantry and the spiritual significance and the drama. All those things surround this moment, and to watch the crowds, team to the streets of Rome, making their way here for a front row seat, is really pretty awesome.
It's striking to me how many young people we see in that crowd today. Now, this is a great university city. There are lots of American universities that have Rome campuses, but the notion that the church, religious faith, are just not of interest to huge numbers of young people. There we go.
Okay, there is movement beyond the door here.
Oh, it's not there.
This is not the new Pope you're seeing here. And who are we looking at here?
We're looking at the Cardinal Protodeacon Dominic Mamberti, and he will address the crowd in Latin.
Annuncio vobis gaudium magnum. Habemus eminentissimum, ac reverendissimum Dominum, Dominum Robertum Franciscum, Sancte Romane Ecclesiae, Cardinalem Prevost. Qui sibi nomen imposuit Leonem XIV.
George, are you able to translate and tell us what we just heard?
I think we have just heard that the first American has been elected Pope, Cardinal Robert Prevost of the Order of Augustinians. It was impossible to hear what papal name he has taken, so we'll hope we get some clarification from that, on that in a moment.
History playing out in ways that we didn't expect.
Not at all. This is something that most Vatican watchers, if it does turn out to be Robert Prevost, said would never happen because he's an American. but he is the least American of all the American cardinals, if you will. He spent most of his career in Peru and in Rome. He's a son of Chicago. He's an Augustinian, he's of the Augustinian order. Is that Pizzaballa?
Yes, Cardinal Pizzaballa with the beard there.
But he has been, he ran for Pope Francis the dicastery of bishops. So,
all right, we can report that it is Prevost, Robert Francis Prevost, an American bishop, is the new pope.
And that's a first.
As we heard, he was born in Chicago, naturalized citizen of Peru after decades of working there. An American cardinal is a conversation we didn't have a lot in these days leading up to this moment.
Cardinal Prevost was on, I think, a lot of people's lists as a possible compromise candidate, Lester, someone later in the process. It's very striking that he has been elected so quickly, and it sure would be nice to know what name he took.
I don't know if it was said and we couldn't hear it.
I think it was said and we couldn't hear it.
All right, we'll get a clarification on that in a moment. But George, you had talked about there was some skepticism about him because he was an American, but you note that,
as Ann said, he has spent a tremendous amount of time in Peru. He's got international experience here in Rome. He was the head of his order in the United States. And I think this is a quite striking election that it settled on him as quickly as this.
What expectations, additional expectations could be placed on him as an American?
I think this is one of these situations where a man was regarded, for example, by Latin Americans as virtually one of them. Cardinal Sean O'Malley, who was reported to be a candidate the last time, is another example of that. So this is not quite the same as other American cardinals. This is a man with a real international profile who was obviously well known among the electorate, or well known enough to achieve a very rapid victory and election as the 266th successor to St. Peter.
And we are trying to learn the name and make sure we get it correct. The name being taken by Provost. It's not clear to me whether the crowd has heard the name or been able to digest the name, or that's even the significance of this moment.
I think, George, what role in leading the dicastery of bishops do you think played in his selection?
I think it made him well known, perhaps more well known than other candidates across the electorate. He was known to be a man very much favored by Pope Francis, a kind of favorite son, if you will. But this is a strikingly, surprisingly quick election of someone who, by reason of his place of birth, has just broken the mold again.
And you can see the crowd now standing in place where they are, shooting what they can with their phones, looking for the information we certainly need to be able to report on his papal name. And hopefully we will hear him speak here momentarily to address the thousands who are gathered on St. Peter's Square and the millions who are no doubt watching around the world.
And can you imagine in Chicago, one of their own is now the leader of the Catholic Church?
He's a 69-year-old, so we've talked about age as a big part of the discussion during these votes. George, that would seem to, at that age, it would seem to split the difference.
It's right in what we were calling the last couple of weeks, Leo, Lester, the age window. One of our colleagues here is telling us that he's taken the name of Leo XIV. That would be a very interesting choice, and that Pope Leo XIII was the first pope to address a particular set of letters to the church in the United States. He was a great supporter of the church in the United States, and there would be a certain symmetry to a Pope Leo XIV coming from the United States.
Let me bring in Kathleen Sprouse-Cummings, who's joining us with some of our coverage here. Professor, thanks for being with us. What can you tell us about Prevost, the significance of his election here?
Prevost is a wonderful choice. He is right in the mold of Pope Francis. He believes that bishops should be pastors rather than managers. I'm stunned. I said it was a possibility that there would be an American pope, but I still am having a bit of trouble believing it. It's historic. It's momentous. If it is true that he's taking Leo XIII was the great pope of Catholic social teaching, and it signals that our next pope will continue in that vein. It's a remarkable moment. I'm stunned.
Did you ever see an American pope in these times?
I thought Prevost had the best chance of any American candidate ever, and perhaps going forward. I still thought it was unlikely, but if anyone had a chance, it was him. He is born in Chicago. He went to Villanova University. He spent so much time as a bishop in Peru and a superior of the Augustinians, traveling to the 50 countries around the world in which Augustinians ministered.
Kathleen Sprouse-Cummings, thank you for being part of our country as we watch the cardinal electors standing there on the balcony. We are waiting to hear from Pope Leo XIV. That name will be rolling off our tongues here shortly, no doubt, as the world comes to know the new leader of the Catholic Church.
They've got to be just raising the roof at Villanova University outside Philadelphia. They are the home to the first American pope. That is just remarkable.
And as someone who spent 14 years of his career in Chicago, I can confirm what you said a moment ago, that Chicago is probably off the rails right now.
I'm sure they are celebrating. What an incredible moment this is for the nation and for the Catholic Church at large. This has always been something. They never thought an American would become pope because it would give too much power, they thought, to one country. But it could be because Prevost, oh, here he comes. Hold on. Here we go.
And there he is, Pope Leo, the new leader of the Catholic faith, greeting the assembled on St. Peter's Square. Officially Leo XIV, the name he has taken. Can any of us imagine what it is like to stand in that place right now and looking out on that crowd? The leader of 1.4 billion Catholics.
He looks amazingly relaxed, don't you?
Yeah, I think it's exactly what I was thinking, Ann. He seems comfortable in the role, which means he's probably been thinking about it over the last 24 hours as the votes mounted up.
This is, I look at this and think, last night when we talked about who the names were, he was the last on our list because he was a long shot, because he was an American. And I'm fascinated to know what happened in that conclave, how he rose to the top.
Let me bring in Christopher White now, an NBC News Vatican analyst. Christopher, what can you tell us about Pope Leo XIV?
Well, he's an American, and that in itself is something that is shocking many people who never thought this would, be possible. The general thinking has long been that America has too much power in the world and should never have the papacy. But I think someone like Provost, who has spent a third of his life in Peru and a third in Italy, isn't typically thought of as an American by his brother cardinals. They think of him as someone who knows the Vatican, he knows the world. And I think that's probably what gave him a lot of support in this conclave, because he's spent so much time outside of the United States and around the world. He's someone I know personally. He's someone who's deeply thoughtful, asks intelligent questions, but I think very much, comfortable in who he is. And I think he's a real intellect, but he
La pace sia con tutti voi.
Peace to everyone.
Fratelli, sorelle carissimi, questo è il primo saluto del Cristo risorto, il buon pastore che ha dato la vita per il gregge di Dio. Anch'io vorrei che questo saluto di pace entrasse nel vostro cuore, raggiungesse le vostre famiglie, a tutte le persone, ovunque siano, a tutti i popoli, a tutta la terra. La pace sia con voi. Questa è la pace di Cristo risorto, una pace disarmata e una pace disarmante, umile e perseverante. Proviene da Dio, Dio che ci ama a tutti incondizionalmente. Ancora conserviamo nei nostri orecchi quella voce debole ma sempre coraggiosa di Papa Francesco che benediva a Roma.
Ears hearing his voice.
Il Papa che benediva Roma dava la sua benedizione al mondo,
giving his blessing to the world
quella mattina del giorno di Pasqua.
On that morning, on that day of Easter Sunday.
Consentitemi di dar seguito a quella stessa benedizione.
Allow me to continue that same blessing.
Dio vi ama tutti.
God loves everyone.
E il male non prevarrà.
Evil will not
Siamo
prevail.
tutti nelle mani
We
di
are all
Dio.
in the hands of God.
Pertanto, senza paura,
So without fear,
uniti,
united,
mano nella mano con Dio
hand in hand,
e tra di noi,
with God and among ourselves,
andiamo avanti.
we go forward.
Siamo discepoli di Cristo.
We are disciples of Christ.
Cristo ci precede.
Christ goes before us.
Il mondo ha bisogno della sua luce.
The world needs his light.
L'umanità necessita di Lui come
Humanity
ponte
needs
per
him.
essere raggiunta da Dio e dal suo amore.
But as the bridge between God and his love.
Aiutateci anche voi, poi gli uni gli altri, a costruire ponti.
May we all
Con il
build
dialogo,
bridges
con l'incontro,
with dialogue and encounter
uniendoci tutti per essere un solo
so that we can
popolo,
all be
sempre in pace.
one people, all in peace.
Grazie a Papa Francesco.
Thank you, Pope Francis, for all you've done. We're hearing the first words here of Pope Leo XIV, just elected Pope.
Voglio ringraziare anche tutti confratelli cardinali
I'd like to also thank my brother cardinals
scelto me
who chose me to be the successor of Peter and to walk along with you, searching all together for peace and justice, and working together, men and women faithful to Christ, without fear, to proclaim the gospel, to be missionaries. Pope Leo offering these initial words, which we're just translating on the fly here. I'm a son of St. Augustine, and I'm an Augustinian. We said, with you I am a Christian, and for you I am a bishop. So may we all walk together towards that, to the place that God has prepared for us. May we walk together, accompany each other. To the Church of Rome, a special greeting. As Bishop of Rome, of course, a special greeting. We've got to look at how we can together be a missionary church, a church that builds bridges, that is always open to receive everyone, just like in this square, to receive everyone, to welcome everyone. Our charity, our dialogue and love. And now, a greeting in Spanish. Please allow me here to.
A todos aquellos, en modo particular, a mi querida diócesis de Chiclayo en el Perú.
To all of you, but especially to the people of my diocese of Chiclayo in Peru.
Donde un pueblo fiel ha acompañado a su obispo, ha compartido su fe.
Where we had such faithful people accompanying the bishop, and we had such faithful people helping the bishop. To all of you, the people of Rome and of Italy, we need to be a synodal church, a church that's a pilgrim, that shows charity always, and especially is charitable to those who are suffering. Today, today is the day of praying to the Madonna of Pompeii. Our Blessed Mother Mary always wants to be close to us. She always wants to intercede for us through her love. So let us pray together for this new mission, for all of the Church, for peace in the world, that she will help us give us a special grace, our Mother. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with you. You are blessed among women, and blessed is the fruit of your womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
Pope Leo XIV there.
Pope Leo XIV, very interesting. A few themes coming out already there from his first piece, talking about peace.
Indeed, saying a greeting of peace. May my greeting of peace enter into your hearts and reach your families. All people, wherever you are, all peoples of the entire planet. Right. May peace be with you. God's peace be with you, he said. And here we see him in after having given that opening and beautiful words.
Continuing also the message of Pope Francis, where he even said in Spanish and Italian, tutti, tutti,
Il Santo Padre Leone, a tutti I fedeli presenti e a quelli che ricevono la sua benedizione
in the square and all receiving or hearing this through new technology, online, everywhere, offers his the plenary indulgence and formula.
Preghiamo Dio Onnipotente perché conservi a lungo il Papa a guida della Chiesa e conceda pace e unità alla Chiesa in tutto il mondo.
Sancti Apostoli Petrus et Paulus, de quorum potestate et auctoritate confidimus, ipsi intercedat pro nobis ad
The
Dominum.
holy apostles Peter and Paul.
Precibus et meritis Beate Mariae semper Virginis.
And we also pray to the Blessed Mary,
Beate Ioannis Baptiste,
to
et Sanctorum Apostolorum
Saint
Petri et
John,
Pauli et omnium Sanctorum. Misereatur vestri omnipotens Deus, et dimissis omnibus peccatis vestris, perducat vos Iesus Christus ad vitam aeternam. Indulgentiam, absolutionem, et remissionem omnium peccatorum vestrorum, spatium vere et fructuose penitentiae, cor semper penitens, et emendationem vitae, gratiam et consolationem Sancti Spiritus, et finalem perseverantiam in bonis operibus tribuat vobis omnipotens et misericors Dominus. Amen. Et benedictio Dei omnipotentis, Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti descendat super vos et maniat semper.
And we just heard the blessing there, received the blessing there of Pope Leo XIV, and to the world, to the city, this most solemn blessing to all of us and all of you visiting and watching out there.
What is interesting, he is smiling, and I found very touching the fact that he made reference to his
Pope Leo XIV meeting the faithful outside St. Peter's Square, paying homage to his predecessor, Pope Francis, saying God loves everyone. Evil will not prevail. We are all in the hands of God. Hand in hand we go forward, he says. He thanks Pope Francis. He thanks his brother cardinals, he says, who chose me. And he talked about the mission, the missionary sense of the church as well.
He talked about that the church needs to be a missionary church. He talked about how they welcome all people. He also said that it needs to be a synodal church. That is, these synods that Pope Francis was a big advocate for. And it's hard, it's something that we don't necessarily understand. It's tough in America, but it means listening in its most basic sense, Lester, and he brought people from around the world to talk about the issues in the church. And it was controversial with some. And so just from his remarks, we can see when they talk about a pope of continuity, the missionary aspect, welcoming all, a synodal church, he seems to be hitting themes that Francis hit. George, do you agree?
He's hitting themes that Francis hit, but let's remember that it was John Paul II who, in the early 1990s, announced that the grand strategy of the church in the 21st century was going to be what he called the new evangelization. Everyone a missionary, everywhere mission territory. I have to say, Lester and Ann, I was struck by how at home in this role Pope Leo XIV seems in the first hour of his papacy. It is almost as if he had been thinking about this for a while. He seems quite comfortable.
He is an American, his roots in Peru, and his roots also in the city of Chicago. And you know that city is celebrating. The faithful in that city are celebrating tonight. Molly Hunter has been down in the crowd in the square today, measuring the reaction. And I think you've got a guest from Chicago, Molly.
You work for the Catholic Church for decades. You know, host a podcast. You've been here all week. That was just a really emotional 10 minutes, and I was lucky enough to be standing next to you. Can you just tell me what it means?
Oh, I mean, first of all, just as a Catholic, to have a new Holy Father, that's exciting enough. But then to find out that he's a Chicagoan as well, I could not believe it. It's that was something we were always told could never happen. There could never be an American Pope. But the new Holy Father is from Chicago South Side. He's an Augustinian, so like Pope Francis is a member of a religious order and not a priest for a diocese or archdiocese, has been a missionary in Peru most of his life. He left Chicago when he would have been in his teens to join the Augustinians as a missionary. So it's rather extraordinary. I mean
you've been speechless, but your heart has been racing.
It has been because, you know, it's such a joy for the church. The Pope is a person of unity. You heard him talk about how we need to be a missionary church that includes everyone, that includes the poor. I'm just so thrilled that now we have this interregnum, as they call it, over. We can move forward as a church. He's a man of great compassion, which is what, of course, you always want. And he loves Jesus very much and wants us all to be serving the poor in Jesus' name.
Can you speak about your hometown tonight? What do you think is happening back in Chicago?
I think the first question, I know, Lester, you're probably thinking this too, is he a Cubs fan or a Sox fan? My guess is probably a Sox fan because he's from the South Side. But, I mean, no one's going to call Chicago the second city anymore. At least I hope not. We have a Pope, and no other city in America does. So I think people are going to just be taking to the streets, so excited. It's a wonderful day for Chicago, for the United States, but also for the church worldwide.
Can you walk me through just how we were standing next to each other when those curtains opened, we turned around. Can you just tell me what was going through your head at that moment?
Well, of course, you're also, you know, you're wondering the who, you know, who will it be, but then also what name will he take? And he's taken Leo XIV, which is, it's a very interesting choice. Again, not one that many people were thinking of, but Leo XIII wrote the great encyclical Rerum Novarum, so obviously it signifies his love for the poor, and building up what people who work contribute to the world and to the church. The dignity of work, that's going to be something we're going to see him emphasize.
Mary, I really appreciate it.
Oh, my goodness.
What a privilege for me to just be able to be sitting next to you for these last 15 minutes.
Yes, how providential.
Lester, I'll send it back up to you.
All right, Molly, thanks very much. The bell's tolling once again here above the Vatican as the new Pope, Pope Leo XIV, concludes his remarks and leaves the balcony. That's the shot moments ago as he greeted the faithful. Thousands gathered here, millions, no doubt, watching across the world. And that picture just capturing so much of the excitement tonight. As we've been speaking, we've received a posting, a truth post from Donald Trump, President Trump, saying, "Congratulations to Cardinal Robert Francis Prevost, who was just named Pope. It is such an honor to realize that he is the first American Pope. What excitement and what a great honor for our country. I look forward to meeting Pope Leo XIV. It will be a very meaningful moment." Again, that posted on the President's account at Truth Social.
We also have some reaction from the Archbishop of Philadelphia, Nelson Perez, who knows now Pope Leo XIV, and he said, "A wonderful, gentle, profound man of God, a great gift to the church and the world."
I'm struck again by the name, Lester. Leo XIII really invented the modern papacy. The papacy of moral witness, papacy of serious teaching about public issues. And it'll be fascinating to see if Pope Leo XIV continues that tradition that was set in motion by Leo XIII in the late 19th and early 20th centuries.
I want to go back to someone who knows the new Pope. Christopher White is back with us. Christopher, what can you tell us about Pope Leo XIV?
Here in Rome, he came over over here and to take over the office to advise the Pope on the appointment of bishops around the world. In fact, I'm standing next to Bishop Sean McKnight, who was the last archbishop that Pope Francis appointed in the United States, which Cardinal Prevost would have been heavily involved in that process. And I remember the first time I met him after he arrived in Rome, we were in his office, and he said to me, I wish I could spend more time working on appointing new bishops, but unfortunately I have to deal with a lot of problem cases, which is good because it reminds me that I have to be a pastor first. And I think when we think of the papacy of Pope Francis, he was the world's pastor. And I think just from listening to those remarks that we just heard from Pope Leo XIV, formerly Cardinal Prevost, those were certainly the same sentiments he wanted to share. They harken back to Pope John Paul II's Be Not Afraid, but also overtures of Pope Francis of a church that's open to all. And I think those are some of the major themes that we're going to see and hear in this young papacy as we try to figure out what direction he wants to chart for the global Catholic Church.
If there was going to be an American Pope, is this the model of an individual you would have hoped would be standing there?
Yeah, I think it's the only sort of American that would work right now. I think the fact that he spent only a third of his life in the United States really meant that he brings a global perspective to the role. He was a missionary. He is a missionary. That's his formation. So he spent so much time in Peru. I know he did everything he said from being an auto mechanic to being a pastor to being a professor. So he wore a lot of hats, and now he has the top job in the Catholic Church. And I think it's that background, that fairly low-profile background, that probably kept him off of most people's front-runners list for this job. In addition to the fact that his first passport is an American passport, a U.S. passport. He, of course, is also a Peru passport holder and a Vatican passport holder. But that sort of prejudiced a lot of people against him, I imagine, initially. But a third of his life in the United States, a third of his life in Italy, and a third of his life in Peru, he brings to the office tremendous perspective far beyond Chicago.
Christopher, thank you. I'll ask you to stand by. We're also joined by Archbishop Sean McKnight of Jefferson City, Missouri. Thank you for being with us. We had a chance to speak together last night. You talked about the qualities of the next Pope, someone who could work in collaboration, I think were some of your words. Can you give us your first reaction to Pope Leo XIV?
I am beaming with joy. I have a heart full of hope, and I just feel deeply honored to have yet another Pope from the New World. And I hope our brothers and sisters from South America, Central America, and the rest of North America can join us in this exhilarating moment of having a Pope from Chicago. My gosh, I am just thrilled to death.
And you, of course, are a product of the Midwest, so I certainly understand that pride. What kind of pressures do you think it brings on him as an American Pope?
Well, I am very grateful that the Cardinals chose him. They are the most diverse conclave I think we've ever had. And thinking back now, hindsight is 20/20. He's probably the one cardinal many of those new cardinals from the peripheries had some sort of personal relationship with. So thinking about it now, it's not such a big surprise. But yes, we have a lot of obligation and responsibility on our shoulders as the Church of the United States. And now he's bearing that as Pope Leo XIV.
His experience, as we said, it transcends just one city or one region. His roots in Peru, being in Chicago. How does that serve him now going forward? The Church, as we've talked about, has some issues with growth in certain parts of the world, whereas in the Americas, it does better.
He does have a certain global mindset that's going to be very helpful in his role as the universal pastor of the Roman Catholic Church. I think he is well positioned, well prepared, and as some other commentators have said, he looks already in some ways so comfortable. It's a position and a role that he is familiar with, having worked closely with Pope Francis, and he has got my love and my loyalty and my support.
All right, let me bring back Ambassador Joe Donnelly. We appreciate you standing by. Give us your first reaction to Pope Leo XIV.
What a moment in American. There's such pride. But the other thing that struck me is you said, if he wasn't an American, he would have been at the top of the lists of almost everybody because of all of the qualities he has, working in the Curia, being so solid doctrinally. And the world sees him as theirs as well. And the fact that he was the least American of Americans really helped. I can't help thinking, I don't live too far from Chicago, the incredible pride there. And at Villanova, how proud they are of their son who studied in Philly. And it's just an amazing moment for a church. The Catholic Church in the United States has been an immigrant church. That's how it started. And for all of these immigrants to come to this point where the Pope comes from the American Catholic Church is breathtaking.
You mentioned that, you know, if not for being an American to be a perfect choice, that attitude, does that translate into some baggage that he's going to be carrying for a while as he tries to chart his own course as Pope?
I don't think so. I think people love him for who he is. And wherever he goes in the world, he'll have the full weight of the people of the world behind him. Obviously, in America, there's just an extraordinary burst of pride. But look at Peru, look at South America, the bishops all over the world who worked with him. And so I think wherever he goes, he brings the goodwill of the people of the world with him.
Could he be a game changer, and does the church need a game changer?
Oh, I think he'll be fabulous because he is so smart and so talented, and you can see he has a spine of steel and is willing to speak truth to power. And that's a really critical element.
You know, I was thinking, you know, you were suddenly thrust into the world stage as Pope, and you're thinking about what you're going to say when you step out into that balcony. Obviously, his words well chosen. How did you think he did in that moment, that first face-to-face meeting with the faithful?
I thought it was amazing, and the people were so welcoming. But he clearly said, look, evil is not going to win. We stand with the poor. We stand for every person who struggles around the world. He's following Francis in those traditions, but I think the choice of Leo XIV, one of the other things it signifies is he's going to be his own man, that, you know, he's making his own mold, and we just couldn't be more proud in the United States to have this happen.
Will he be able to bring together a coalition of folks that will understand some of the issues the church is facing? For example, it's a massive debt. We talked here among us that, you know, it would take more than just a person who has experience, but also a person who could enlist the right people to help. Does he have that kind of connection?
Well, I think everybody will be lining up to help him. And he also knows, having worked in the Vatican, where the problems are, and he also knows how to fix them as well. And so he has a head start in that way. And then traveling around the world, I think he has the goodwill of everybody. So he has an opportunity here to stand up and have a clarion voice.
As we near the top of the hour, and some thoughts about what we have just witnessed and where this all leads.
We have seen the first American Pope, but he did not address the crowd in English. He spoke in Italian and Spanish, and he referred to his diocese in northern Peru, and I understand their website has crashed since he became Pope. But I think that shows the global, international nature of this man. And it's also reflective of the global nature of this church. And it's the second semi-Latin American Pope in a row.
And he will have a lot of work to do, Lester, in Latin America. The church in Latin America has not really responded, as I think Pope Francis hoped it would, to that call to a new evangelization. The church in Peru has got a lot of problems with the abuse situation, and he's going to have to be very determined and strong in dealing with that. But I come back to how comfortable he looked in his own now papal skin at that presentation on the central loggia of the Basilica. It's also a great name. I love the name Leo XIV. It's a great run of popes going back to Pope Leo the Great, Leo I, and the continuity with Leo XIII, with his particular care for the Church in the United States, is very much on my mind this evening.
What is his reputation in the Curia in Rome? George, does he have a reputation as someone who can run an organization?
Yeah, he hasn't been here that long, and I think that's the first thing to be said, but he was a leader in his own religious community. Pope Francis obviously had a lot of respect for him. Running the dicastery for bishops is a very, very challenging job.
Yes.
You're trying to find men capable of leading the church really in the developed world. The bishops in what we sometimes call the third world are chosen by the dicastery for the propagation of the faith. But I think Leo XIV fit well into this Roman situation in his few years here, and he certainly got, during these general congregation of bishops, a clear sense that his brother cardinals want a restoration of orderly process in the governance of the church, and they must get to grips with these financial problems, or there is going to be serious trouble down the line, and not so far down.
Yeah. One of the issues that he dealt with as head of the bishops was Bishop Strickland in Tyler, Texas, and he helped remove him from that diocese. What does that tell us about Leo XIV?
Well, I hope it tells us that he understands that there are points beyond which bishops cannot go and remain effective servants of their local churches. But that problem extends across the ideological spectrum. There are bishops in Germany today who flatly deny truths of Catholic faith. That's a problem he's going to have to deal with at the other end of the theological, ideological spectrum.
Why do you think the electors coalesced around him so quickly?
I have thought for the past 2 weeks, Lester, that there was a group of cardinals who were very interested in electing Robert Prevost the Pope. They obviously got themselves organized. I think we can probably assume that the assumed frontrunner, Cardinal Parolin, did not get a substantial vote, or at least did not build on it in the first two ballots. And the appeal of a man who had spent a great deal of time in Latin America, who knew the Roman scene, who had great language skills. He speaks completely fluent Italian, completely fluent Spanish. All of that, plus the desire to demonstrate the unity of the church by moving in a rapid but steady way to a decision, led us to this really quite striking moment tonight.
I didn't get your thoughts on what he said and the words that he chose, his acknowledgement and tribute to his predecessor.
I thought the remarks were really terrific, and the call for peace, that the church wants the world to be in a better situation than it is now, and that he identified this peace with the peace of Christ. That true peace involves a recognition of the humanity of the other, and religious faith can help us to see that. Now, he's got some very serious problems. He's got a persecuted church in Ukraine. He's got a persecuted church in Venezuela, Nicaragua, and Cuba. He's going to have to look at the relationship of the church to China, which I think is a very controversial matter right now. So there's a lot on his plate internationally.
I want to bring in Marianne Ahern from our NBC station in Chicago, who has previously interviewed Pope Leo XIV during the last conclave in 2013. Marianne, it's great to have you on. You're a dear colleague and a friend. And before I ask you about your meeting, your interview with him prior, what's the word from Chicago tonight? What are you hearing?
We are hearing that everyone is just beyond excited. They can't believe it. Neither could we. My photographer and I had run to the square to hear the news. When I heard Robert Francis, I said, oh my goodness, it must be him. It is the newsroom we hear has erupted. We really don't know him well, other than we know he's Chicago roots, and we're claiming him. I did meet him 12 years ago after the conclave, just briefly, right outside here of the Augustinian house, and spoke to him for a few moments. He spoke very highly of Pope Francis. I know that he was once the Midwest head of the Augustinians and lived in the Beverly neighborhood on the south side there. And so I tried to reach out to the current head of the Midwest region just last week, and they were a tad nervous to speak ahead of time and said they would wait and see what happened. But they did give me this. I wrote it down. He is respected for his intelligence, good humor, and approachable, his stamina and his courage. He was a good friend of Francis. This was from Father Tony, who went to Villanova University with the now new Pope. It is just amazing, Lester.
Yeah, Marianne, and we were talking earlier about how many Chicagoans we both run into who were here on vacation, or a few that had made the trip. So that excitement certainly extending around the world. Thank you so much for being with us, giving us a sense. And I'm sure we'll be seeing more from Chicago in our coverage as we continue here. But the sun is setting now over Rome on what has been a rather dramatic day. We started off with that first, well, yesterday. The days are lost now with the jet lag, but of course yesterday the black smoke, today the black smoke, and now the white smoke.
It's a historic day for the country, a historic day for the Catholic Church, and I never thought I'd live to see an American Pope. I'm kind of in shock. Are you, George?
A bit, and I'm also impressed by this tremendous outpouring of faith we've seen here since the death of Pope Francis, his funeral. These crowds here today. Catholic faith is alive and well in the world, and let us hope and pray. I say as a Catholic that Pope Leo XIV builds on that and achieves that idea, that vision of a church of missionary disciples healing a world that really badly needs healing right now.
Yeah. Let me bring back NBC News contributor Kathleen Sprouse-Cummings, who is a professor of American Studies and History at Notre Dame. Professor, we appreciate you staying with us throughout this coverage. Would you call this a shock?
I was surprised. I knew it was possible, but still hard to believe, Lester. It's really a historic moment. And I was so moved by Pope Leo XIV's words. God loves everyone is one of the first things that he said. It's remarkable. And with all due respect to Chicago, he went to Villanova from Delaware County, Pennsylvania, where I'm from. So we're claiming him too.
Okay, it's going to be like that.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about what could have happened behind those closed doors that elevated him so quickly in what, again, was a rather short conclave? I think we may have lost her. Kathleen, are you able to hear us?
Oh, yes. Yes. I'm sorry. What does it mean?
Yeah. Can we talk about the meaning of this to the church, not only in the United States, but globally?
Yes. Well, globally, there were qualities that they were looking for in the new pope. Someone who had a missionary's heart, someone who had managerial experience, and someone who had a global vision. And very few of the papabile really ticked all those boxes. And Pope Leo XIV did, and that's probably a reason why he was chosen by his brother cardinals. It means that the church, he unites. He's a bridge builder among continents. He was born in the United States, missioned in South America, and worked for so long in Italy. So he unites the church in that respect and reminds us all that it is a universal church. And while U.S. Catholics are going to be celebrating in a particular way, it's also a reminder that we are part of a world church, a global church, and he embodies that in his mission and in his experience. So I think it really is just truly remarkable, and I have a lot of hope that he is the man the church needs as its leader.
Yeah, you know, the read I'm getting is that he is perhaps not the American Pope that people may have imagined for decades, that he is his own man and maybe harder to define than perhaps we're giving him credit.
I think watching him and seeing the sense of calm he projected on that balcony, it reminds me of Pope Francis talking about how he felt an overwhelming sense of peace after his election, a peace that remained with him through his whole pontificate. And you get the sense that Pope Leo XIV feels that same peace and entrusts his heavy burden really to God as a man of faith. I believe that he is someone who brings a wealth of experience and someone who, yes, might not have been who we would think of as an American Pope, although remember, very few people thought that was possible there could be an American Pope. But he is a son of Chicago, a son of the United States, but has that world vision, that global vision that is so important. I also I note in his talk that he addressed all peoples everywhere. He's not just a leader of the world's 1.4 billion Catholics, but as he said, of people all over the planet. And that's a reminder that this is a moment of importance, not just for the Catholic Church, but for the world.
Kathleen, we thank for you and others who are helping us kind of fill in and offer the full portrait of the man. I want to bring in Father Joseph Farrell, Vicar General of the Order of St. Augustine, who is from Philadelphia. We thank you for joining us. I understand you spent some time with the new Pope recently.
That's right. That's right. He served as our prior general for 12 years. And during his time here in Rome now as cardinal, he comes over to our house every morning for morning prayer and to celebrate Mass together. And then would come back after work and have pranzo, have lunch with us. So we just had pranzo with him on Tuesday. And our prior general, Alejandro Moral Anton, offered a special blessing for him, invoking the Holy Spirit to be with him as he entered into the conclave.
Well, let me ask you, I mean, what did he talk about the conclave and about, you know, at least on the peripheral of the process?
Yeah, he talked very little about the process of the conclave because it was still under the secret of the Congregation of Cardinals. But he did express this enthusiasm of being part of something that's historic in the Church, and was very aware of the seriousness of the job that the Cardinals had together as a college, working together to select the next Bishop of Rome, the next Holy Father.
Does he have the power or the opportunity to be influential in specifically the American Catholic Church?
I believe he does. Yes, I believe he does. One of his great gifts is the gift to listen. And he's very willing to listen, and I think he models that for others. And I think we, as not just even the American Church, but the Universal Church, if we can develop this sense of listening to each other, recognizing, respecting each other, even when we have differences of opinions, I think he'll model that for us as the Pope.
And what is he like as a person? And I ask that through the lens of the man we've seen in a few minutes ago speaking. To watch him, is that the same person who will be Pope in terms of how he will handle the Church?
I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is. My opinion of him is very high. I respect him fully, and he's a man who's very humble. Never expected this to happen. Was expecting to go back to life as normal after the conclave, and yet sees every role that he has taken. He's taken on as a role of service. And I think he'll continue to do that, recognize that he's been elected to serve. One of the things he said during the talk he gave.
And one of the things that we were talking about was the pressure on him as an American. Will he be able to use it to his advantage even outside the Church as we think about his role as a moral authority in a world that's been rocked by multiple wars and other forms of strife?
That's right. He will. He'll be a voice to help. Also, we use that phrase, a compass, to help point us into a direction of recognizing the choices we make as humans affect others. They're not always just a personal choice. They affect other people. And I think he'll teach us how to do that by leading us as one of us. He mentioned in his opening talk that he quoted St. Augustine by saying, Augustine says, "For you, I'm your bishop, and with you, I'm a Christian. I'm going to walk with you along that path." And I'm sure that the Cardinal Prevost and now Pope Leo XIV will continue to do that, recognizing his role as one who walks with us together. He mentioned also synodality, that sense of listening, of working with each other and walking with each other.
Do you think that we will see him in the United States in the near future? Is that something that he would want to do or that we should expect him to do?
Yeah, I have no idea. I'm sorry. I know he's scheduled to be on the East Coast of the United States in August, the end of August. He was expected to be at a function with the Augustinians in Philadelphia, in the province of St. Thomas of Villanova. He comes from our province in Chicago. I don't know if he had any plans on going there or not, but I'm sure life has changed drastically and he has to relook at his calendar.
I think that's an understatement. We thank you for being with us as we look at some of the pictures from earlier, people catching themselves in the jumbotron, as it were, or just caught up in the words, meeting most of them for the first time, the new Pope, Pope Leo XIV, the first American Pope. George?
I've been watching some of these shots from the presentation of the new Pope on the central loggia of the Basilica, and beside him was Cardinal Parolin, who was reputed to be the front runner going into this. He looked relieved, it seems to me. He looked like a man who was glad that this had worked out in a different way. Now, this raises a very interesting set of questions for Pope Leo XIV. Does he keep the same team that was in place with Pope Francis? Does he renovate the team at the top level? This is going to be some very interesting personnel decisions to be watched over the next few months.
Okay. And some of the shots. I don't know if this is earlier or
it's earlier.
Yeah, this is earlier. Oh, this is live. Okay, so this is pictures of the celebration, the honorum, still continuing at the foot of the Basilica. Let me bring in Molly Hunter right now, who has been down in the crowd, not only today, but the last couple of days, really measuring the level of excitement. Molly, what do you have?
Yeah, Lester, the level of excitement and volume level down here really high. We actually just learned from the Vatican that 150,000 people packed this square and the surroundings as soon as that white smoke appeared. But I want to actually bring back, Lester, you may remember John and Irene and Father Brian from this morning. We met them this morning after the black smoke. We just spotted them again in the crowd. This was the couple that got married earlier this week in the Vatican. You have had an extraordinary week. Yeah. You'll never top this ever.
Never.
How did today feel, seeing that white smoke, being in the crowd?
Overjoyed.
Just wonderful.
Just totally overjoyed.
And an American Pope.
Couldn't believe it.
Yes.
Never expected it.
I mean, your feet aren't touching the ground.
No.
We're just floating.
We're floating.
Father Brian, did you ever think that you would see this in your lifetime?
Never. I just answered a text from a friend of mine, and he said, "You quoted me, there'll never be an American Pope." So I just wrote back and said, I was wrong. One of the greatest things I think about people having faith, and there was something in the movie Conclave where the Cardinal Secretary of State said to the brother cardinals, certainty can be lethal to faith. And when we say there'll never be an American Pope, or there'll never be two popes back to back from different religious congregations, I think we have to realize that the pundits aren't always right, and we cannot be certain.
What does it feel like for you, right, Ben, to have an American Pope? And from the Midwest.
I can't imagine. I cannot imagine what our city, sister city, Chicago, is going through right now. I envy them, but celebrate with them. It's awesome.
I mean, Chicago knows how to celebrate.
They do in
as we know. What does it mean for you for the, I think, and you
I just think it's, again, I think there's a great energy that's going to come from this that the church needs. I think that we're going to see people pay attention. There's also something about the name he chose, Pope Leo. The last one was Pope Leo XIII, of course, and was very instrumental in speaking up for people's rights and workers' rights, that they're paid fairly, treated well. I'm sure he chose that name for a purpose.
Well, you guys just can't stop smiling. No. Smiles off your face. Well, how are you ever going to remember this week? How are you going to tell people about this week?
We're just over the moon in joy. It's wonderful. A wedding, a conclave, a new pope, an American pope.
No one's going to believe that you know about you. No. Well, guys, I'm glad we spotted you again. I appreciate you coming back to join us on NBC and enjoy this. Lester, I'm just going to have you just actually pan the camera if our signal holds, so you can see the celebrations. These aren't even Americans necessarily. There's just so many people so excited to be down here. Again, we think the number was about 150,000 people after that white smoke. That number was
All right, you got drowned out there, but I think the folks around you have transmitted certainly what's happening there, what's all about it. Molly, thanks very much. As we said, the sun's setting now across Rome, but the streets, as you can see around the square, still full of people enjoying the moments and things that many didn't expect. As we talked about, Pope Leo XIV was not considered high up on the list of possibilities. But we've also talked about sometimes there are surprises in this process.
This was a surprise in several ways, Lester. First of all, while we discussed recently, nationality really doesn't make a difference in choosing a pope in these days. There was always a footnote to that, and that footnote was, except for Americans. So now we have an American who spent a great part of his life in Latin America. Secondly, that this resolved itself so quickly. I have to believe that there was a strong bloc of cardinals entering this conclave who wanted this man to be pope, and that they persuaded others very, very rapidly that that should be the case. Third, I do love the name. I think this is a connection to a great pattern of Catholic history, and particularly Catholic history in the United States. Now, the challenges in front of this man are extraordinary. He is going to have to face the question, does he retain in office men who elected him, but who may be part of the managerial problem or the financial problem? That's a serious question. He's got to explain himself in a more full way, explain his program, if you will, to the world and the church at the inaugural Mass next week. And then he has some immediate problems to deal with, global problems. He knows Latin America. The church is being seriously persecuted in Cuba, Venezuela, and Nicaragua. And there is a feeling that the past pontificate was not vocal enough in addressing that. Mexico today is the most dangerous place in the world to be a Catholic priest because of the attack on priests by the drug cartels. Christians are being slaughtered in Nigeria at a fantastically grim rate. So there are signals to be sent about defending the faithful in the most extreme circumstances around the world. And that's before we get to Ukraine, Russia, the church in China, and the really mega questions like that.
Well, if I can continue with that thought and bring back U.S. Joe Donnelly, the former U.S. ambassador to Holy See, and ambassador, you're hearing part of this conversation here.
I am.
Can you talk about the geopolitical issues that this new pope may want to insert himself in, and how best to go about that?
What struck me, Lester, was how comfortable he looked and how confident he looked, that he knows these challenges are out there. And, you know, under Pope Francis with Cardinal Zuppi, there was an incredible amount of work done on the Ukraine-Russian situation with Cardinal Pizzaballa in Gaza. And so I think he will continue those efforts to try to move the ball and to bring peace in these areas. I expect him to be fully engaged, and the look he has is like, God's on my side. I'm going to do my very best.
What did you think about his remarks, and did they hit the right note at the right time?
I thought the remarks were terrific, and I've heard that not only President Trump but President Putin has congratulated him, and I think he'll have a runway to try to move the ball on some of these things. Right now, you don't want to be, critical of him, on the other side of him. And that gives him a window, I think, to try to get more things done. As George was mentioning, in South America, there's so many opportunities to try to have better outcomes than we have right now.
For those who are looking for a successor to Pope Francis in terms of style and topics, will they be disappointed?
Oh, I don't think they'll be disappointed at all, because the interesting thing is I think in part why he won and was so successful is that folks didn't perceive him as being from the liberal or the progressive. But he kind of, everybody has their hopes in him. And Francis loved him. They worked together extraordinarily well. And so I think he's set up for success. It's going to be an unbelievably hard job, but I think the whole team is with him, and those who loved Francis will love him. Those who loved John Paul will love him. Those who loved Benedict will love him, and they'll all be hoping for his success.
Is he strengthened by the fact that this was a short process, that it was the fourth vote in which he came out on top? Does that give him even more runway as he starts?
Well, I think it shows that there's enormous confidence behind him. As George was pointing out, I think a lot of the conclave was actually done before the conclave started, because it's clear, I think, a block of cardinals went in there knowing what they wanted to do. And so he has enormous support behind him. And I think, just like with the president, you have a first year, a first 100 days where you can really have enormous success. And I'm expecting him to have that.
Well, the Catholic faith and the world getting used to Pope Leo XIV as the new Pope, addressing the faithful here who waited about an hour or so to meet him and to hear him and to see him. And now still celebrations on St. Peter's Square after the election of the first American Pope. And that by itself shocking some or surprising some. A man with deep roots, however, in South America and also Chicago, the many places that he has touched in his long career path. 69 years old. And this has been, we're hearing more and more about the things that he's going to have to tackle, including these geopolitical issues. Is that something, and George, feel free to weigh in here, is that something that Pope Francis walked into gingerly, or how did he handle those things?
I don't think so. I mean, I think he had mixed success on the world stage at trying to move the world to a more peaceful place. He and both Pope Benedict played a role in the détente period, or the détente, if you will, between Cuba and the U.S. And I went to Cuba with Pope Francis in 2015 before he came to the United States. And he was treated there, what struck me in Cuba, he was treated as a politician really more than a leader of the Catholic Church, because what they wanted was a better relationship with the United States. I think it's part of the job description that if you are Pope, you are going to be a world leader. You are the leader of Vatican City. You're going to be a world leader on that stage, and you can't go into it gingerly, I don't think.
Yeah, the Pope has no material power, Lester. I mean, he's got the Swiss Guard, but that doesn't get you very far in the world of material power. He does have great moral power, and that moral power works can have a real effect when it's stated clearly. And I think part of the criticism of, for example, the current Vatican-China policy, where the Holy See, led by Cardinal Parolin, has bent over backwards to be accommodating to the Chinese Communist Party, which has made it very clear that it intends to Sinicize, Chinify, all religion, to the point where religious images in Catholic churches in China are now replaced by portraits of Xi Jinping. The question of whether the church's voice has been clear enough on that is a very real one and a serious one that Pope Leo XIV is going to have to take on. John Paul II was a pivotal figure in the collapse of European communism, not because he talked about politics or economics, but because he called people to live in the truth, to live according to their consciences. And if they did that, they would find tools of resistance that the bad guys who had all the material force just couldn't meet. That eventually led to the Solidarity movement, among other things, in Poland. So there's a model there, there's a modern model of the Pope igniting revolutions of conscience that I'm sure Pope Leo XIV is aware of and will, I hope, try to deploy. But the first task of the Pope is to be the chief shepherd of the Church. And I think at his inaugural homily, I suspect, at his massive inaugurating his pontificate next week, he'll certainly talk about some of these issues, for sure. But he's going to lay out a vision of being a church of missionary disciples, a church in which everyone understands that he or she has a role in offering others friendship with Jesus Christ. That's what the church is for. That's why the church is. And I fully expect Pope Leo XIV to call us to that missionary vocation.
Well, this is, there have been so many sights and sounds of this day, the bells, the smoke, but certainly also the smiles. And some of the pictures we've been sneaking up on the page here of just people just beaming from all parts of the world, just expressing themselves in the moment. Molly Hunter has been down there through it all. Molly, you've talked to folks. What has been your favorite moment down there?
We're still talking to folks. The joy that you mentioned in those pictures, Lester, and I'm not sure exactly what pictures you're looking at, is so palpable down here, and it's been one of the most welcoming, one of the most exciting atmospheres. Favorite moment, I got to say, we brought you right after Pope Leo came out, standing next to Mary, that Chicagoan, watching him come out and watching her reaction and being with someone who is so familiar with his work, but also the church was really, really moving. And just, Lester, I'm not a Catholic. We had goosebumps, all of us, when that white smoke came out, and we were so, it's been a real privilege to be down here around everyone. I do want to introduce you to Christina Mori, who we met earlier today. Again, I've been down here a long time. We keep running into the same people, even in crowds of 150,000 people. And you were here on a mother-daughter trip. Your mother is still on her way. And we spoke this morning, and you were getting yourself all the way to the very front for this afternoon vote. What was it like way up there? Because we were all the way back here.
It was absolutely surreal. I mean, just being, you think it's so far away when it's on TV and you're right up there and he's so close. And it was amazing to see just the reverence because everybody around us was like shushing everybody and it was silent. Like you could hear a pin drop as you were hearing who has been chosen and just the joy and excitement and hope for what this next chapter will bring.
Who were you surrounded by? Who were you sitting with?
Funny enough, as someone being from the Midwest, all the Midwesterners kind of found each other. So it was a couple people from like Nebraska and Minnesota, and there was a group of American seminarians that were with us. And they were all trying to say, like, we think it's going to be this guy,
No one mentioned an American.
No. One Italian in front of us turned around as a joke and said, "Oh, it's going to be Prevost," and all the seminarians around us were like, "No way!" And then when the name was called, the just amount of shock and joy, because they had just served mass with him a couple months ago, so they all have pictures and they all know him on a somewhat personal level.
Can you describe the joy personally, then, being up there surrounded by people sharing this moment?
It's surreal. It was just a moment of unity and love and hope in this next chapter, whatever it may bring, because we were surrounded by I counted at least 7 different countries touching shoulders, and we were all just excited for each other and hugging and knowing that we have a new pope, and we're so excited to see what
That's the other thing that struck me. And we just saw a big group of Brazilians celebrating and Spaniards celebrating. And there's so much excitement that there is a new pope, even if it wasn't from their home country.
Yeah.
I'm looking for pockets of Americans out there, and I haven't found big pockets of Americans. Have you seen, you saw that you were sitting with a bunch of Midwesterners, but have you seen kind of a bunch of Americans out here anywhere celebrating?
Yeah, there's been little pockets, and I've seen a few American flags. So that's a cool moment.
But everyone's celebrating, not just the Americans, of course.
Everyone is. It's such an exciting time. We don't know what this new chapter will bring, but there's so much hope and love and excitement and unity on such a unique night, and it's something I will never forget.
What do you think was happening in Chicago right now? Of course, in the Midwest, in Chicago, there'll be a lot of pride tonight.
I got a lot of text messages from friends in Chicago before my phone died, and you're saying my mom's on her way, and she called and she's so excited, and so when she gets here, we cannot wait just to be able to explore the city together, and hopefully maybe we'll be able to see him come out again while we're here.
I mean, you're here for a while, and what amazing timing for you. Christina, thank you for joining us again.
Of course.
Lester, everyone also wants to come up and talk to us, and that's not a particularly common experience I think I have necessarily as a journalist, but everyone here is smiling. There is so much joy. People are describing it to me like a family atmosphere, like you know everyone. And Christina is one of the people that have been here out here all day. Most people have. It's been a sunny day. It's been hot out here, and there's been no complaining. There's been no pushing. There's been just a lot of community is how I would describe it. Lester?
Yeah, it's some of the feelings you described. I've described witnessing this one and prior conclaves, that watching people in the streets, watching their moment, the timing that brought them there, the faith that brought them there. It is very special. Molly, you've done a great job of bringing their story, so we appreciate that. As we head into the early evening here in Rome, the sun has now set behind us. What a beautiful backdrop, and that emotion, of course, and punctuated by those bells ringing as the world learned that there is a new pope, and that's a gorgeous wide shot.
Nobody does ceremony better than the Catholic Church. I mean, look at that setting.
No,
it's extraordinary. And the all of this has been, it's captivated the world, and it's captivated the internet, strangely enough. And it's not just because of the movie Conclave. I mean, people got really interested in the cardinals and in the whole pageantry of it.
I'm just thinking about what they're going to be doing for the next couple of hours. And I mean, the past few conclaves like this, the new pope, has asked his brother cardinals to spend one more night together, so they can have a dinner together. I don't think I'd be scandalizing anybody if I say I think there'll be some corks popping in the course of that. And I would suspect that this man, who by all accounts is very approachable, very accessible, would want to do that. Who would want to be alone on your first night as pope?
It certainly is something to celebrate, and I think we can firmly expect a celebration. It's just after 2:30 p.m. on the East Coast, right 8:30 p.m. here in Rome. We have a pope, and he is an American pope, Leo XIV from Chicago, a surprise for many Vatican watchers and an exciting announcement for the faithful gathered here in Rome and around the world. Moments ago, President Trump spoke to reporters about his reaction to the first American pope. Here's what he said.
What greater honor could there be that we were a little bit surprised, very happy. But just It's a great, absolutely great honor. Again, to have the Pope from the United States of America, that's a great honor. That's a great honor. Watching, and they said, he's from America. I said, that's great.
President Trump reacting to Pope Leo XIV being an American. Let's bring in Father Robert Hagan, who knows the Pope well. Father Hagan, can tell me about the man that you know.
I think the world was given a gift, Lester. He's a warm, intelligent, faith-filled, inclusive, wonderful priest and mentor, and really a servant leader. We're very, we're just overjoyed with what we know him to be and the gift that he is to the church and to the world at this time.
Did you have high hopes that he would not only stand a chance, but ultimately become Pope?
We did. I mean, I'm an Augustinian, as is he. We literally refer to each other as brothers. And so to see him emerge on that balcony, it was like seeing a family member pop out there. You were just speechless and so proud and humbled at the same time, because he is a humble man. He's incredibly gifted, but, you know, he spent his whole life in service of the church and God's people. He's a missionary. He spent a large part of his life in Peru, helping people who are poor, people on the margins. He's just, you know, someone that has devoted his whole life to building bridges and bringing people together. And so I expect him to continue to do that as our Holy Father.
It's been often talked about and continues to be an issue in the Catholic Church, the handling of the church sex abuse scandal. How do you think that he will work through that continuing problem?
You know, this is not his, this is an incredible a mantle of leadership, but it's not his first position of leadership. He served as prior provincial, he served as bishop, and he served as cardinal. And so those issues have been on the table for a period of time. And quite frankly, there's no tolerance for that. And there needs to be education and healing and outreach. And so I think a lot of the things that he's been involved in already, he will continue to make sure that are happening during his tenure as the Holy Father, our Pope.
What kind of pastor will he be in you know, with a flock of 1.4 billion?
I think he'll be inclusive. I think he speaks at least 4 languages. I think that he will be welcoming. One of the charisms of the Augustinian order is hospitality. And so for an Augustinian, friendship is of critical value. And so I think people will find him approachable. He has a bit of a twinkle in his eye. He's a good conversationalist. He has a sense of humor. He likes people. He relates well to people. And so I think what we're going to find is someone who is willing to collaborate and to listen. One of the words that we've been using in our church now, and certainly Pope Francis was a promoter of that, was synodality. To listen to the voices of the poor, to listen to the voices of women, to listen to the voices of those who may not always be heard. And so I think you can expect that legacy to continue in Pope Leo XIV.
All right, Father, we appreciate you being with us here. I want to bring back, if I can, Archbishop Sean McKnight of Jefferson City, Missouri, also our Vatican analyst, Christopher White. Christopher, let me start with you. What should we remember? What should the takeaway be from this day?
Lester, I think one of the major takeaways is what a global church that this man represents. He bridges 3 continents. He's someone that may be American-born, Chicago-born and raised, but most of his life he really attributes to being shaped by his time in Peru as a missionary. And I think back over the time that I've gotten to know him in his 2 years here in Rome, and I think of someone that he's easily approachable on the street. He drives a very small car around town, and it's one of those things that you know, I think that sort of approachable character, that disposition, will serve him well in this role. Of course, he's got a flock of 1.4 billion Catholics to serve, and that will not be an easy lift. But I think, as we saw this evening, this is a man very comfortable in who he is, and he seems to have a pretty steely backbone, mixed with, you know, a bit of wry humor that will probably serve him quite well in this post.
And Bishop McKnight, I should acknowledge you're the Archbishop designate of Kansas City, Kansas, so you've got a new adventure on your hands. And as you view that, and as you view through this larger prism of what's happened today, what are your feelings about the position of the church right now?
I feel very optimistic. His background, I don't know him that well personally. He probably knows me more than I know him because of his previous role and involvement with my appointment as the Archbishop of Kansas City. But I think he's very well positioned for effective leadership. That was one thing I mentioned to you last night. What I was looking for in our new Pope is someone who can lead us at this time, one who would be open to transparency and accountability. I think his background, his language skills, his diverse experience, the fact that he's a religious and also from the United States, he's got a lot to draw from. And I am looking forward to meeting him for the first time at the end of June when all the world's new archbishops get to celebrate Mass with him.
When you talk about accountability, what specifically are you thinking of?
We've got 2 crises that have been going on in the church, and they still need to be tended to, both the abuse of power as well as the financial scandals that are affecting our church. And we got to address those problems directly and head on.
And Christopher, let me bring you into that as well. Where does that stand right now? We keep hearing about it as an issue in the church, but it's hard to get a reading on where this is right now and what pressures necessarily that Pope Francis brought to deal with it.
Yeah, it's no secret that the Vatican's finances are a complete mess. It faces a woefully underfunded pension system, which is a real challenge that the new Pope is going to have to face. Francis was trying to tackle it, particularly in his last months of life, setting up a new commission to help fundraise for the church. But it's certainly an ongoing task and unfinished business. On abuse, Francis really succeeded in changing the law. You know, there's tougher laws on the books than ever before. But if you talk to any victim survivor, one of the challenges that they often face is trying to know what's going on with their cases as it works its way through the often murky judicial process here. And I think any new pope would be wise to prioritize that issue so that victim survivors can not just feel as if they're being heard, but that their cases are being properly adjudicated. So those are some internal issues that the Pope is going to have to face. And of course, there's the whole external factor as well. I mean, there are wars raging in the world. Christians are being persecuted. The issue of migration, climate change. So a Pope is asked to balance a tremendous plate of responsibilities. Former Cardinal Provost, now Pope Leo XIV, is someone who seems to be a real man of government. I was looking back just now over some of my notes that I took after our first meeting, and I was amazed at the number of questions he asked me about the U.S. church because he'd been away from it so long. So I think he's someone that tries to get a sense of the situation before he acts, but certainly now he's going to be doing that for a church of 1.4 billion Catholics in about 200 countries around the world, and that's a heavy lift.
Just a little bit daunting. And Bishop McKnight, as you think about that task ahead, how does one even begin to organize thoughts and directions, and how much pressure will be on him to move forward quickly on some of these issues?
I believe he's well aware of what those issues are. What I liked about his initial appearance to us as the new Pope, Leo XIV, was his humble confidence. He exuded that he's got this. He understands what it's about. And I was very happy to hear him mention synodality, that that's going to be the path forward on all our crises. It's going to be the path of listening to the people and also consulting the people who have the ability and the skill sets to tackle the problems.
All right, well, I want to thank you both for being a part of our continuing coverage here of this historic moment in the Catholic Church and certainly the world. Let me bring back Father Joseph Farrell, Vicar General of the Order of St. Augustine, who is from Philadelphia and knows Pope Leo. Can you give us some insight into why the cardinal electors coalesced around him so quickly?
Yeah, not being there, I don't know for sure, but I would imagine that his personality is one that it's immediately an attractive asset that he has. And he has a real global experience. He would know many of the cardinals who were there electing him from his work that he did as the Augustinian Prior General, work that he has served as a bishop in Latin America, especially in Peru. He worked on many international commissions in Latin America. So some of the cardinals would have already known him and would have realized that he's a good choice.
Can you give us a little insight into what an Augustinian is?
Sure. So the Augustinian order, the Order of St. Augustine, is based on the theology, the spirituality, the life of St. Augustine of Hippo. So St. Augustine was a North African bishop. What's now currently Algeria is where he served in the Diocese of Hippo. And he was in the 4th and 5th century. The Augustinians themselves were formed as an order in the 13th century. So 800 years after Augustine lived, people were still recognizing the importance that this African bishop had for theology in the church and in the world. So the Augustinians follow that rule that Augustine had established. That rule was especially concentrated on community life. Our friars and sisters living together in community, depending on each other, being responsible to each other, at times correcting one another, and living that community life so that we can then go off and respond to the needs of the church. But what's core is living with one mind and one heart.
Yeah, and how does that inform us about then what kind of pastor, what kind of teacher, what kind of pope he will be?
I believe that as pastor, as teacher, as pope, as preacher, he recognizes intelligently that the mind and heart have to always be in conversation with each other. That one does not think just rationally, nor does one think just from their heart, but have that conversation constantly going on between mind and heart. And I believe he'll bring that to his papacy.
Yeah, I think that also kind of runs in order with some of the things we heard in his remarks earlier tonight. Thank you so much for being with us as we continue to gauge reaction. A historic day, not only the election of a new pope for the Catholic Church, but the election of the first American pope, which is, of course, resonating not only around the world, but around this country, specifically Chicago, where he has served in a place that is taking and celebrating great pride tonight, along with the rest of the world. We've been watching a remarkable scene playing out on St. Peter's Square, really from the start of the conclave, people who wanted to be a part of the moment, who hoped that maybe, just maybe, they would be there when that white smoke would appear. And for many, that paid off. Their persistence, their placing themselves to witness and to be a part of the moment. That's what it looked like. And there's a little backstory I'll tell you about these seagulls that we see in the background. Prior to that, the crowd erupted in applause, and we weren't quite sure what it was. It was a seagull chick that was struggling its way to get to mom, and people could see it on the big screen, and that we all got ready for white smoke at that moment, but it was a seagull. I think you can see it in that picture. You can see. So anyway, we share that story because it was one of the very special moments tonight, this afternoon, on the on top of the Sistine Chapel as we waited for that white smoke, the signal that the Catholic Church has a new pope. I want to bring Ann and George back into the conversation. You've heard some of what we've been talking about and some of the many issues. It's you think in a position like that, you're going to land on day one and everyone's going to want a piece of you. And you're shaking your head, yeah.
Yeah.
Comes with the job.
Please, Annie, go
ahead. You were asking Father Farrell about what his spirit is, where it comes from, and he quoted St. Augustine here, and he says, "With you I am a Christian, for you I am a bishop." And I think that gets to the servant leader that I think he expressed tonight that we could expect, continuing what we saw with Pope Francis, reaching out to people, being a missionary. And I think that's for the first moments of his papacy. That's what I took, George.
If I remember the rest of that really wonderful quote from St. Augustine, it's, "With you I am a Christian, for you I am a bishop. The first is a consolation, the second is a danger. The second is a burden." And I cannot imagine what Pope Leo XIV will be thinking as he goes to bed tonight. The Pope is not an autocrat. The Pope is the servant of a tradition. It goes back 2,000 years. He's not the master of the tradition. How he figures out a way to make that tradition, which, as Pope Leo XIV said, goes back to Jesus Christ himself, come alive in the modern world with all of its confusions, all of its nihilism and relativism at some points, is a huge challenge. And he has to be a man of prayer in order to meet that. Now, when Bishop Prevost became Cardinal Prevost several years ago, I called a former Augustinian colleague of his and said, what kind of a man is this? And the first thing he said was, he's a man of prayer. And you heard one of the fathers tonight say that even in his role in Rome, he would come over here where we are right now on top of the Augustinian house and pray the morning office with them, celebrate Mass with them. That has to be for any Pope, the center of his life and his energy. I often said about John Paul II that the best hour of his day was the hour between 6:30 and 7:30 in the morning when he was praying by himself in the chapel of the papal apartment. Everything flowed from that, and one has to hope for Pope Leo XIV that he can be in that kind of active conversation, that pipeline with the Lord, if you will, as he faces some very tough decisions.
Yeah, and I think the other thing I think that quote from St. Augustine demonstrates is this is going to be a man who's going to accompany people. He spoke about that today. He wants to build bridges. He wants to help people. That's what he's done in Peru. That's what he has done here in Rome. And I think we will see that going forward.
All right. I want to go back out to St. Peter's Square, where we saw the huge crowds today. People waiting for the smoke, and then after the smoke, waiting to meet the new Pope. Molly has been down there, and let's check back with her one more time. It still looks like a pretty busy place.
Yeah, Lester, the crowds have definitely thinned a little bit, but people are still milling about, and people are still smiling and celebrating and kind of saying hello to strangers, and it's this really friendly atmosphere. I'm joined by Jess, remind me your name again? Lex and Chastity, excuse me. You guys were are friends. You guys had already planned this trip to Rome, and then you wound up here today. You've been out here all day. Can you describe what it was like for you?
It was remarkable, truly. I'm still, I think, in shock and almost rendered speechless, which is really weird for me. The fact that we get to be here is so special, and I'm just so grateful.
And you guys are practicing Christians. You're a Catholic. What does it mean for you to be around not only a lot of Catholics, but also people from all over the world?
I mean, like Jess said, I'm just at a loss for words. It's just so powerful. You could just feel like the love and the spirituality. Like, it's the holiest of times to be in Rome and during a jubilee and the conclave to experience the white smoke. Like today, we were texting our families being like, yeah, I might be there when they pick the Pope. And then No, it's just to be blessed by him and to have it be the first American Pope, just to be a part of a historic moment. It's just incredible.
Overwhelming.
Yeah, overwhelming and just blessed to be here.
When you saw that white smoke, what was going through your head?
We were crying, we were hugging, we were jumping, we were just like rejoicing, and it's just a feeling like, I don't know, we just looked at each other and
We
it's...
totally expected it to be black.
Yeah. I was hoping. We just all day today, we're like, everything was trying to not get us here, the flights, everything that was going on, and we're like, we're going. We're like, no, we're going. What if they do that? What if they pick the Pope today? What if we're there?
and you will always have this.
Yes.
Chastity, what did it feel like for you?
I don't want to cry again.
It's okay.
It was very overwhelming. Just the love, you can feel it. You can feel it from everyone. As soon as the white smoke went up, everyone just felt like we were all together. And these are my best friends, but it felt like everyone was my friend. And we were just all holding on to each other and crying.
I mean, what other place in the world, what other event in the world would result in an experience like that, surrounded by people from, again, speaking all different languages, rich, poor, young, old, from everywhere?
Nothing's
Have you
gonna
ever
compare.
experienced?
Nothing's going to ever compare to this moment.
I don't think we ever will again.
As Americans, how do you feel about having an American Pope, something that I'm sure that many of you have been told probably was not going to happen?
It was very unexpected for certain.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's something that's going to be really unifying and something that we needed, the world needed, our country needed, and my life needed.
I feel a lot of pride hearing that it was like we were all shocked when everyone was looking at each other like, did they just say American? And there's just this sense of pride that we have just representing our country and having the Pope. I mean, it's just. Yeah,
you guys have also been hanging on to each other for the entire time I have seen you. There have been tears coming down. You've been FaceTiming everyone.
We're excited to see each other.
What a day for the three of you to experience together. Thank you so much for sharing that joy with us. We really appreciate it, and it's certainly something we're hearing from a lot of people. You also seem to recognize people as they were coming out, and it's just been a real family experience, I think, for so many of you out here on the square.
Definitely.
Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it. Lester, I'll send it back up to you guys.
Okay, Molly, thanks very much. And I'm thinking, as we kind of review the day, we had talked yesterday about, how business got done, what happened over lunchtime and dinner time, and that's where the real discussions are. And I'm wondering if we didn't put enough value on that's really where this happened. Not in the Sistine Chapel per se. But
it could have, Lester. Certainly things got solidified very quickly. I think, as I said a moment ago, that a considerable block of cardinals during those general congregations the past 2 weeks since Pope Francis's funeral came to the view that this was the man they wanted. And if you come in with a strong block like that and you can build his vote, as they manifestly did from last night till this afternoon, you've got a very good shot at getting your man elected. And I'm sure the massaging of that, if you will, took place informally between those formal votes. But the fact that this went so quickly suggests to me that a lot of people had this on their minds, even if it wasn't on a lot of people outside's minds from the beginning of this process.
And is that the pre-conclave, is that showing the value of those moments together and the decision? Remember, we thought they were going to start on Monday.
Right.
They decided to start later in the week.
I think those meetings, the congregations that they had, I think they had a dozen of them. I think they did do well. I spoke to one cardinal before he went into the conclave who said it was an imperfect process that worked perfectly well. I was struck by his serenity going into the conclave. He seemed very happy with that process. But watching what we saw today, it's been such a the last few hours, it's been such a wonderful moment of community, of happiness, of power, of faith. And I hope it lasts longer than just this night.
So when we saw him today come out on the loggia, I'm not sure which one of you. Somebody mentioned how relaxed he seemed.
Yes, he did.
I said he seemed like he had been preparing for this for a while. And yes, I think he seemed entirely comfortable. in the role. I have to say, I think the opening remarks were just splendid. And it set a good tone going into next week when he will liturgically introduce himself to the world.
Well, that concludes this NBC News special report. More ahead at NBC News Now, online at NBCnews.com. And we'll have a full wrap-up when I see you back here for NBC Nightly News. I'm Lester Holt in Rome. We want to leave you now with the incredible sights and sounds of the last couple of hours.
Habemus papam.